Chairman, I can confirm that the live stream is now operating.
Thank you, Debbie. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this virtual meeting of Cornwall Council's Neighbourhoods Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Before consideration of today's business, I will outline the protocols for the meeting. Today's meeting is being live streamed to the public via Microsoft Teams and is also being recorded. When members are speaking, they may choose to use their video. If the Council's live stream fails during the meeting and we cannot share the proceedings, I will adjourn the meeting so that access can be restored. If the issue cannot be resolved, I will halt the meeting and the remaining business will be concluded at a future date. If a member experiences a technical issue, I will adjourn for a short period to try to re-establish their connection, but the phone number is in the chat box if you need help from IS. Members wishing to speak or ask a question should indicate by typing an X in the chat box. As I call members to speak, I will remind you to switch on your microphone. If for some reason you cannot be heard, the Democratic officer will advise you. Votes will be taken using a roll call procedure, and the Democratic officer will read out the recommendations and the name of the proposer and seconder, and will then call each committee member's name in turn. You should confirm your name and advise whether you vote in favour or against the recommendation or whether you wish to abstain from the vote. The Democratic officer will then count the votes and advise the result accordingly. Turn over my paper. Where a member has declared a non-registerable interest, a disclosable pecuniary interest, or an interest by virtue of any trade union membership in a matter, they must leave the virtual meeting, and their departure will be confirmed, and they will be invited to rejoin the meeting at the appropriate time. So that's the end of my announcements. And before we start today's business, I will ask the Democratic Services Officer to confirm members' and officers' attendance today, please. Over to you, Jo, if I may.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, I'll now call your name. Please can you confirm your name and your electoral division? So Councillor Martin Alvey.
Good morning, Martin Alvey representing Fiocc and Plain Place.
Thank you. Councillor John Bastin.
Good morning, John Bastin, Constantine, Mornan and Budok.
Thank you. Councillor Malcolm Brown.
Good morning, Malcolm Brown, Councillor for St Austell, Bethel.
Thank you. Councillor Nikki Chopak.
Councillor Nikki Chopak, Divisional Member for Poundstock.
Thank you. Councillor Dominic Fairman.
Dominic Fairman, St Teph and St Breward.
Thank you. Councillor Pauline Giles.
Councillor Pauline Giles, Divisional Member for St Blasey.
Thank you. Councillor Stephen Knightley.
Councillor Stephen Knightley, Weybridge East.
Thank you. Councillor Matt Luke.
Councillor Matt Luke, Pembrokeshire and Boscopper.
Thank you. Councillor Cornelius Olivier.
Hello, Councillor Cornelius Olivier, Penzance Central. Could I just say I've got to disappear for about 15 minutes. Okay, but I will be back after that period of time for the rest of the meeting. My apologies for that.
Thank you, Cornelius.
Thank you. Councillor Carolyn Rule.
Carolyn Rule, Mullion and Greydruin.
Thank you. Councillor John Simmons.
Yeah, John Simmons, Councillor for Penryn East and Myler.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Thomas.
Good morning, Ian Thomas, Cornwall Councillor, Redruth South.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Thomas.
Good morning, everyone. Councillor Mike Thomas, Helston North. And if I disappear, it's because I've had the Windows 10 blue screen of doom. I'll be back as soon as I can. Thank you. I'm sure it won't happen, but just in case it does.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kevin Towell.
Kevin Towell, Newquay Treferris.
Thank you. And then just to advise that with regard to our cabinet members who are in attendance today, we have Councillor Edwina Hannaford, who's the portfolio holder for climate change in neighbourhoods. We have Councillor Rob Nolan, who's the portfolio holder for environment and public protection. And later in the meeting, we'll have Councillor Adam Painter, the deputy leader of the council, with us. With regard to office, sorry?
Chair, can I say I have to go off between 11 and 12 for another meeting?
Thank you, darling.
And same for me, 11:15 to 12:15. Thank you.
Thanks, Edwina.
And with regard to our officers in attendance today, from the Neighbourhoods Directorate, we have Sophie Hosking, who's the Strategic Director Neighbourhoods. From Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service, we have Mark Hewitt, who's the Chief Fire Officer. We have Anthony Bartlett, who's the Assistant Chief Fire Officer. We have Vicky Wallins-Hancock, who's the Assistant Chief Officer, Head of Service Development and Improvement. With Catherine Billing, who's the Area Manager, Strategy, Collaboration and National Resilience. And we have Helen Turner, who's the Service Business Manager. From Communities and Public Protection today, we have Alan Hampshire, who's the Service Director, Communities and Public Protection. And we have Simon Mould, who's the Head of Communities. From Environment, we have Peter Marsh, Service Director Environment, and Mark Holmes, Carbon Neutral Cornwall Manager. From the Customer and Support Services Directorate and from Operation and Change, we have today Ben Rom, who's the Service Director, Operation and Change. We have Johnny Alford, who's the Lead Non-Operational Surveyor, and we have Stephen Morgan, who's the Senior Portfolio Surveyor, Farms. From Finance, we have Tracy Stepney, who's the Head of Financial Planning and Insight. We have Melissa Dyer, who's the Business Reporting Manager. From Democratic Services, we have myself, Jo Heather, who's a Democratic and Governance Officer, and I'm supporting the meeting today. We have my colleague, Debbie Bolton, who's also a Democratic and Governance Officer, and she's our meeting producer today. And in the background, we have our colleague, Ian Buckingham, and he's our Democratic and Support Officer, and he's managing our live stream today. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Jo. I'm sorry, colleagues. My dog was trying to get involved there, as he quite often does in our meetings. So I hope he didn't cause a disturbance. Right, thank you very much for that. I'm glad you had to go through all those titles. It's difficult, isn't it? So we'll start the agenda proper, if I may. So the first item, item 1, is apologies for absence. I think we're all here, aren't we, Jo? But I'll come to you to make sure.
Yes, Chairman. I haven't received any apologies for absence, and we do have all the committee members present.
Thank you very much. Second item is declarations Sorry, Martin?
Just to say, I must send apologies that I won't be returning after lunch. I've got to attend an Outbreak Engagement Board meeting.
Thank you very much for that. The next item is item 2, is declarations of interest. Does any members of our committee have a declaration of interest they wish to make on any item on the agenda today, please? Just hang on if you put an X in the box, that'll be great. No, right, thank you very much. So then we move on to item 3, which is minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of January. That's pages 1 to 12. I'm happy to propose those as a true record. I wonder, Dominic, if you would second them for me, please. Sorry, Ian.
Ian's there ahead of me.
Well, Ian is seconding. So can I ask Jo to take...
Thomas has put an X in the box. I presume it's the second.
Mike, did you have a question before we go to the
yes, well, just to report that to the item regarding the Dave Watkins reference on page 1, to say that I have had full communication with David, and I'm very happy with the bit that he's going to put in about the Helston work by the
He's incorporated your concerns.
Yes, so that's just started reporting that.
Thank you very much. That's a good result. Thank you for that. Right, so if I can go to Jo, please, if you would, to take us through the vote on the minutes. They're proposed by me and seconded by Councillor Ian Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman. So members, I'm going to now call your name in turn. Please can you confirm your name and advise whether you vote in favour or against the recommendation, or whether you wish to abstain from the vote. I'll then count the votes and advise the result accordingly. And the recommendation is that the minutes are approved by the Chairman and duly signed. So first of all, Councillor Martin Alvey.
Martin Alvey, 4.
Councillor John Bastin.
John Bastin, 4.
Councillor Malcolm Brown.
Malcolm Brown, 4.
Councillor Nikki Chopak.
Nikki Chopak, 4.
Councillor Dominic Fairman.
Dominic Fairman, 4.
Councillor Pauline Giles.
Pauline Giles, 4.
Councillor Stephen Knightley.
Stephen Knightley, 4.
Councillor Matt Luke.
Matt Luke, 4.
Councillor Cornelius Olivier. Councillor Olivier told us he was leaving the meeting for a short while, so I'll ignore him. So Councillor Carolyn Rule.
Carolyn Rule, 4.
John Simmons.
John Simmons, 4.
Councillor Ian Thomas.
Ian Thomas, 4.
Councillor Mike Thomas.
Mike Thomas, 4.
Councillor Kevin Towell.
Kevin Tow, 4.
Thank you, Chairman. The vote is out to 13 members of the committee because Councillor Olivier is not present at the moment, and everybody has voted in favour, so the recommendation is carried.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you, colleagues. So we now move on to item 4 on the agenda, which is public questions. Joe, do we have any public questions, please?
Chairman, we don't have any public questions today.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we move around on to item 5, and this is down as Chairman's opening remarks. Now this is a bit unusual, but this meeting is our last meeting, so excuse me, with your indulgence, I do have a few remarks I would like to make. As this is our last formal meeting, I would like to say a few things. It's been a real privilege and honour to chair this committee since 2017. Everyone has worked so well together, and politics haven't needed to play a part in the work of our committee, and we have truly achieved some good in-depth scrutiny work during our 4 years together. And I thank you all for that, past and present colleagues, because some are no longer with us, and we've got some new ones that have joined us. So I think it's been a really, well, as I say, it's been a privilege to be on this committee. There's too much to detail here, but I would like to make a special mention of 3 in-depth pieces of work we've undertaken, in addition to the day-to-day statutory roles that this committee is charged with overseeing on behalf of the council. The waste inquiry will now lead to an opportunity to revolutionise our recycling and refuse services. This panel was led by Dominic Fairman, and its recommendations were adopted and implemented by Cabinet through our portfolio holder, Rob. The Farms Inquiry, led by Martin Alvey, has shown the way forward for our farms estate to be pivotal in not only encouraging and welcoming new entrants into the industry, but being able to show what is possible in tackling climate change issues and enable visionary ideas to be trialled. Finally, the latest inquiry was into the Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service risk register, and I had the pleasure of leading this one, and we came up with some helpful suggestions, I hope, and proposals for ensuring we can increase the number of inspections of our at-risk properties, as well as some wider ideas on how to achieve this. In all 3 inquiries, I would like to pay tribute to the panel members who put in an enormous number of hours, the officers who assisted, and the witnesses who gave us such valuable evidence, and also to our Cabinet members for their support in taking our recommendations forward. I would like to sincerely thank all my councillor colleagues for your support, hard work and enthusiasm for this role. I would like to thank Paul Masters, the previous director, and Sophie Hosking, our current director. Your support and leadership has been much appreciated. And then what can I say about our service directors, Alan, Peter, Mark and Simon, along with your teams? You've been wonderful. Your professionalism has shone through in some very difficult times, and I'm so proud to have had the opportunity to work with you all. Please will you pass on these thanks to your teams. This awful pandemic has really brought out the inner strength of you all. Your willingness to do whatever needed to be done has been so appreciated by the communities of Cornwall, as well as by us, I'm sure. Excuse me. I would like to pay a very special tribute to Dominic Fairman. He has supported me throughout brilliantly, quietly and efficiently, ensuring the committee works well. I'm so grateful, Dominic. Our friendship has come to mean a great deal to me. And finally, last but by no means least, I want to pay a very special tribute to our officer, Joanne Heather. Jo, you've been truly amazing. Your quiet professionalism has been truly remarkable. You're a very talented lady, and we've been extremely lucky to have had you to work with us. You've been fundamental in all the working of this committee and its inquiries, taking on all that additional work involved, always with a smile. It's sad, excuse me, it's sad to know that we've come to this final formal meeting today, but I think we can look back and acknowledge that we have made a difference for the better, as will be seen in our Cabinet members' reports on what has been achieved, what they've done. They're longer reports today, but this is our legacy meeting in a way, and also in the legacy reports today from some of the work we've been involved in. May I thank colleagues who are not standing for re-election and wish those that are every success for May. Hopefully we will be back again after the election and able to carry on supporting Cornwall to be a safer, stronger community. Bless you all. Thank you. Right, that's the end of that bit.
Thank you, Carol.
Sorry, somebody spoke?
Just Mike saying thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Dominic. It's meant genuinely, Mike. Dominic, you wanted to come in, Johnny?
Yeah, no, just I was just to echo that. So thank you for those comments, and yes, I value our friendship very much. But I think I speak for all the committee when I want to say thank you for your very fair but firm chairing over the 4 years. We think you've done it brilliantly. And most of all, thank you for being so inclusive, because I think everybody feels that their voice has been heard during these 4 years. So we're much appreciated, Karen.
Thank you, sweetheart. You make me cry. Thank you, darling. Joe, you wanted to come in. Excuse me.
Yeah, I just wanted to take this opportunity as well to say thank you ever so much for your really kind words. It's most appreciated.
It's meant genuinely, my love. Right, now we'll get on to more serious stuff again. Oh, thank you, Edwina. Right, so we move on now to item 6, which is the pre-decision scrutiny policy development. And this is Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service Integrated Risk Management Plan 2019 to 22. I think Mark is probably going to introduce this one and then hand over to Catherine. Is that correct? Mark Hewitt and Catherine, welcome both of you.
Thank you, and good morning all, and thank you for the opportunity to bring this agenda item forward on behalf of Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service. Firstly, I would like to thank the Chair, Carolyn, for your comments and recognition of the work of Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service. And certainly my thanks extend to all NOS members for your support to the service. We certainly have improved and developed our engagement, scrutiny and governance through this term, working with you. And I see that as a significant step forward for everyone. Certainly the last 12 months have flown by very quickly. An incredible amount has been achieved and progressed in this time. And this item is very much a look forward to the projects and the activities that we'll be focusing on in the last year of our current 3-year RMP. I'm going to invite Area Manager Catherine Billen to provide you with a very informative presentation, which, in addition to the papers in your pack, will conclude with a recommendation to the Cabinet Member for Environment and Public Protection. And that recommendation will be asked, is that the draft Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service Integrated Risk Management Plan 19 to 22, Year 3 Review 21-22 be approved for publication. So thank you for the introduction. I'll now hand over to Area Manager Catherine Billen.
Thank you very much indeed, Chief. Thank you. I'll hopefully be able to share the.
That's working, Catherine. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. Let's get that one. Jeez, we'll try that one again. Can you see that one okay?
Yes, my love, we can see it. Thank you.
Only got half the screen there. Look at that, 1 moment, please. There it is. Perfect. Excellent. Good morning, everybody. And again, I'd just like to say it's always has been and continues to be a privilege to come and join you. So and thank you very much indeed for your kind words. And we indeed within Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service really feel the leadership that yourselves and our fire authority extend to us. So thank you. But why are we here today? We're here today to discuss our integrated risk management plan, and believe it or not, it's year 3, so the final year of that plan. So we're going to look at today the legislative requirements that are contained within that. We're going to run through just a couple of questions that we asked this year around our consultation. We'll then go into a little bit of the detail around what we propose to achieve in relation to our plan, a bit about how we're going to get there, so our performance measures, and then I have also slightly self-indulged, Carolyn, in relation to looking at some of our key achievements, but indeed I will elaborate on how those will be taken forward to supporting us to achieve next year also. So the detail around this, you know, I won't go into because, you know, really as experienced scrutiny members now, you're aware of our national framework document and what that states, and that is to produce our IRMP. This year, through the annual review, we've considered, as we always do in our annual review, those national drivers, what's going on within the National Fire Chiefs Council. We've looked at our intelligence as well locally, and a lot of that has been influenced through COVID. We've looked at our budget, those are continuous improvement actions as well from our HMI inspections and also from our LGA peer reviews, and indeed improvement that have come from the recommendations from Scrutiny and indeed yourselves. We've also looked at how well we're performing, and we know that our performance has been impacted through COVID, and again setting those realistic targets for next year and that final year, and also that consideration to risk and resources and how we're going to deploy our resources to indeed hopefully mitigate those risks. So if we move on to the consultation part, we asked 2 questions, and the first question was around the use of our operational staff. We know that that we are not responding to emergency incidents every second of every day, and indeed what's great about our service is that we are resilient and we are prepared, and that's how we operate, being ready 24/7, 365. And we asked within this consultation, when we're not attending those emergency incidents, and what would you like to see us doing a little bit more of? And we gave 10 options, and what you can see here, we've actually ranked it, so these are actually the results. So what came out the highest was that when we're not going to operational incidents, we should indeed be carrying out the operational competence training. And that ranks all the way down to the delivery of our Phoenix service activities, such as first aid or driver training. I think one thing to be aware of is a little bit of context, is we had 87 responses to our consultation, which indeed doesn't seem like a high number. Out of those 83 responses, out of those 83, 36 were from the public, 46 from our staff, and 1 from our partners. And we do often ask why that is, and I think it's fair to say that that the slightly more shall we say not necessarily contentious, but the questions and the consultation that involves that real high level of community passion, I think tends to invite a lot more response. So we were not surprised that we didn't get a huge response, because it was more around, you know, what do people, we're saying to people, you're going to get your emergency response, but how else can we use our resources? So whilst the consultation outcomes are definitely useful to us, like we said, we recognise also that the numbers were not very high. But as we can see there, operational competence, visiting people in their homes and checking them for safety, carrying out an understanding of building risks and our fire safety audits, going all the way down there with working with other agencies, collaboration, undertaking business engagement activities, community engagement, developing policy, down to the Phoenix services activities, were how they were ranked by those 83 responses. The second question we asked was, we recognise that you know, engaging with our communities are very important, and during COVID it has been significantly challenging, I think, for everybody. And you know, we know that being right at the heart of our communities is absolutely key to who we are within Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service. We know that we're not the busiest service, we understand that, but being within Cornwall and, you know, being part of our community is really at the heart of not only the service but the people of our service, and we're very passionate about it. So not being able to do that as we usually do, and that face-to-face engagement has been challenging. So we asked, based on wanting to really carry out our engagement activities as efficiently and effectively as we can, what are your ideas? What are your suggestions? Lots of suggestions came through from our 83 responses, but primarily, and this was nice, it was around more virtual engagement that communities can actually get involved with. And one specific area that was mentioned was our Chaos takeover event that we did last year with the Chaos radio station, and that really allowed over 160,000 people to engage with us through either interaction or through kind of them tuning into that particular engagement event that we undertook. And it was indeed echoed throughout the responses that more of that was indeed something that would probably be something that would be welcomed by people. It was also mentioned by our staff that the virtual communication that we've undertaken, and indeed that was recognised by the HMI as really good practice, again, is something that our staff really welcome, ensuring that that they are fully appreciative and understand the direction of the service and what our priorities are. So it's definitely about keeping that momentum going. The elements as well around really trying to ensure that the engagement sessions, maybe it might be that virtually we do a little bit more within schools and setting up those webinars, and again taking full advantage of our IT to enable us to work more efficiently and effectively. But elements as well that did come out loud and clear was around being able to continue those face-to-face checks for our really vulnerable people, being able to ensure that, and one nice response that actually came back was that somebody said that they feel that we've got the balance right with our undertaking our statutory duties as a fire service, but also the support of the ambulance service. And I actually thought that response, I didn't write it, by the way, it wasn't mine. It actually came from a member of the public, that I thought that was really quite a nice recognition, recognition of really how we work together truly to make Cornwall safer, working with our partners. And it was recognised that is something that, again, people would like to see us continue within the future. We recognise that COVID has impacted not only on what we've delivered this year, but it will continue to impact as we go into our final year. But however, one thing that I think we recognise is that whilst it's been impactful, it's also allowed us to really explore those opportunities of wider working within our own council, across our own directorate, but indeed across all agencies within Cornwall. And we will be continuing to support where we can that local and national response to COVID, and it may well be the support of South West Ambulance Service, as we have been doing with the ambulance driving. The recent numbers, just to give you an indication, are over 2,000 incidents have been attended by the 31 trained people that 31 trained firefighters that we have, and that includes over 910 of the critical incidents, those real critical life-changing and threatening and saving incidents that we've attended. So again, it's really been beneficial. Great feedback as well from the ambulance service. They've really enjoyed it, and indeed our own staff have as well. We'll be continuing, like we said, to deliver those home safety checks to the most clinically extremely vulnerable, and that information sharing's been really good. You know, now we've extended those clinically extremely vulnerable to in excess of 31,000, but having that information shared across the whole of our council is really allowing us to be able to target our resources to visit those people and help them remain safe and secure. We know that the business safety webinars have been a hit, and again, working with our colleagues across other areas of the directorate have really been beneficial in ensuring that as we come out of lockdown, our businesses really do remain safe, secure, and are able to be successful. We talked about the consultation, and we will be looking to deliver our fire safety messages a little bit more virtually and using the virtual means to really get out a lot of our targeted messages. Training videos, we've got quite an innovative new way of delivering our training that's been put in place by one of our training staff, and again, it's been an absolute hit with our on-call, and there was one session, and this is not unique, where in a week we were able to reach over 450 people across our service. And if we were to embark on visiting 450 people across the county and deliver training to them face to face, that would have indeed probably taken 10 of our training staff in excess of 3 months, and we were able to achieve that in less than a week. So again, the virtual benefits have really been outstanding, and the feedback of that interaction has been good as well. And we know as well that we have been impacted through the requirements of having to crew with 4 because of our social distancing to maintain that the safety of our crews, but we'll indeed be continuing to monitor those ways of working. So as we move into our 3-year plan, recognising all of those different impacts, we'll be keeping our priorities of prevent, protect, respond, our people, who I know our chief speaks exceptionally passionately about, and they really are right at the heart. Their health, safety and wellbeing is absolutely key, and we'll also be continuing with that priority of perform. What are our key deliverables? So we will, right at the top there, maintaining our efficient and effective response 24/7, 365 in line with our response standards. We will be continuing to undertake our community engagement and risk reduction activities. Like we said, really probably targeting those people that are the most clinically extremely vulnerable. Carolyn, Chair, you mentioned it yourself, the protection programme of work, and really takes on a multitude of elements coming nationally, but indeed the work that yourself leading on that scrutiny piece of work really has informed us to take forward that broad piece of work about how we resource to risk in relation to our risk-based inspection programme. The ongoing implementation of the national operational guidance and professional standards, recent publication of 4 standards, and it's important for us to do that gap analysis and ensure that we are complying with those professional standards, to ensure that we are providing, you know, that really high level service that is aligned to those national standards as they begin to become implemented, to implement, and continuing with our implementation of our emergency service network project, which again is that wider project to ensure that we've got good integrated communications across all of our emergency services and resilience nationally. Moving on, well-being of our people remains right at the heart of what is important to us. Talent and recruitment programs, really looking forward to improving our workforce and development strategies, and allowing as well IT to enable a lot of our improved ways of working that I've already outlined, because we indeed need the IT to enable us to reach people virtually and improve what we need to do virtually, and IT is integral to that. We'll be continuing with our property integration as well, and exploring opportunities of collaborative working. And indeed, we're hoping that our Phoenix Services cost recovery activities, as lockdown releases, will become really kind of the forefront of delivering some good services, some good training, first aid training, and we'll also look forward to G7 and maybe how CCTV may indeed play an integral part to the safety of communities throughout that. Additional context, we'll be doing this within just over that £19 million budget. We'll be doing that, as you've said yourself, Chair, with that new administration, and indeed it will be then important that we maintain the standards indeed that have been set in line with scrutiny and governance of our fire authority. We'll be delivering this as Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service, that little step change of moving away from Resilient Cornwall to being that Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service that really focuses on those statutory duties. We'll be doing it in alignment with a new structure that is aligned to the council target operating model, and we've seen a reduction in our staff. So again, utilising automation and self-serve will be quite key things that we'll need to have in place to maximise the opportunities to deliver the services that we need to. We'll be welcoming the HMI from actually the 29th of March. So again, that really is an opportunity to demonstrate our continuous improvement and indeed learn and have their outcomes inform our new integrated risk management plan. And something we wasn't planning for within the last 3 years is the G7 summit. But indeed, as we do within Cornwall, we embrace opportunity and look forward to really maximising the legacy. But indeed, Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service will be right at the forefront of ensuring that it is a safe and secure event that we can indeed be ready for. And we will welcome also an independent review of risk, which is something that we had as a recommendation from our local government agency independent review last year. How will we know we get there? Indeed, I won't go through these in detail, but indeed, you know that we have that suite of performance indicators that are fundamental to ensuring that we not only annually, but indeed daily in some cases, monitor our performance to ensure that we are maintaining that efficient and effective service across the whole suite of priorities that we have, ranging from response, ranging to fitness, ranging to kind of competence. And as I said, a slight self-indulgent, but indeed, I think these are, this is ever.
You okay, Catherine? You're frozen.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Shall I sort of just step in a moment? And,
Yes, I'm not sure. Could you clarify, Mark, in the chat bar, Martin Alvey has put in that he's concerned that up in the top right-hand corner of all of these slides, it says it's controlled, but this is a public meeting. Does that matter? You know, is that covered okay?
No, thank you, Chair. Yeah, no, this is information is absolutely fine for the public as it is based on a consultation. I'm sorry, it's a template that we should have had changed. Apologies.
Thank you.
Yeah, so picking up from where Kath left off, hopefully she'll be able to come back in and move
I
the
think she's
presentation.
moving again now.
There we go.
All right.
Thanks, Mark.
There we go. I don't know what happened there, everybody. Apologies for that one. There we go. So are we all back in the room? All good?
Yeah, all fine, darling.
I mean, I've got fibre there, Chair. I don't know what happened. I do apologise. As we said, the key achievements, we absolutely recognise that yourselves have a huge amount of pride and passion for our service, and that really does, we feel that, we really do. And we also recognise as well that the level of scrutiny and governance that you provide through our IRMP, our annual assurance statements, our performance reporting and scrutiny in line with our HMI inspection reports and action plans. The extra scrutiny that you provided this year, in line with the protection inquiry, we really are kind of grateful for to provide that that direction on behalf of the Fire Authority for us. And one thing that again we are really privileged and thankful for is just your overall willingness to learn. The informal sessions I think have really been great in developing the understanding to support that improved scrutiny that indeed you have provided us. And all of this, all of the support from NOSC and indeed yourselves allows us to deliver those positive outcomes for our communities. And some of those positive outcomes and improvements are indeed will be taken forward is that ongoing support for SWOST, the outcomes of our bespoke review and that strong invigorated leadership that was indeed mentioned there, and the elements of looking at that independent review of risk. We will we're quite excited about the developing our IT improvements that were highlighted through the COVID inspection, and we've talked about throughout the whole of this presentation about us taking forward into the final year and using IT to really drive some of our community engagement activities and improvements in service. The health, safety and wellbeing of our people is indeed a priority not only of Cornwall Council but transcends within our service as well, and we'll be maintaining that and taking really some of the good ways of working forward into our final year. Tri-Service Officer expansion, they've started their induction. Their first proper induction will be on the 1st of March, and that will take us up to 13 new people, and we look forward to really seeing the outcomes that they deliver for us well into the 3rd year and well into 2022. The new kit, our new fire appliances, the ones that are a little bit more compact, really have been beneficial, and we're going to see more improvements coming from our capital replacement programme within the next year as well. And reductions in carbon, this way of working really has seen that across the service. Talked about iTrain, again those improvements in IT, and we really will be looking to keep the impetus and drive of IT improvements going well into the 3rd year. Continuing with working with the Isles of Scilly and our SLA, our service level agreement, we know works well, but we'll certainly be looking to develop a closer alliance with the Isles of Scilly because we've got that really good working relationship with their fire and rescue service. The improved operational assurance we've seen, again, we'll be taking that forward, just ensuring that we learn from those national incidents, learn from our local incidents, and really are at the sharp end of keeping our firefighters as safe as they can be. Talked about the critical control. It's been integral in coming out of COVID, and supporting a lot of the lockdown enforcement activities. And we know it's going to play a very significant part in the G7 planning arrangements. And indeed, I think some of ensuring that Cornwall is safe and secure, as I think we welcome a significant number of people to the county throughout the summer periods as lockdown indeed gets released. And I think it was probably in the informal session, I think you saw a video of our station end improvements and the up to 23 seconds that we've seen in that connectivity, and how much quicker we can indeed alert our fire stations to get them out to respond to incidents. And that will continue, that improvement of connectivity and improvement of mobilisation and times will hopefully improve. And that national operational guidance and fire standards, we've done a lot of work to implement those national policies and procedures and standards, and that will indeed continue without into the third year. I think it was important to go through those key achievements, because they are really integral to moving forwards into the final year of our IRMP, as we really do drive for our efficient and effective service that's full of passionate, proud and professional people, as we really do strive to deliver the best service we can for one and all, and deliver the best outcomes we can for the citizens of Cornwall. So in doing so, what I ask is that the draft Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service Integrated Risk Management Plan for 1922, but this is the Year 3 review, is approved for publication. And I'd just like to invite any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. That was really interesting, as always. So thank you for that. Colleagues, I wonder if you could put an X in the box if you want to ask any questions. Mark, did you want to come back on anything before we go to questions?
No, thank you, Chair, and just my thanks to Catherine for providing that information.
Yes.
Yeah, as can be seen, an incredible amount achieved, certainly on the backward look, and certainly a lot of aspiration, innovation, sort of looking forward in terms of the service. But again, just reinforcing that we are where we are with your engagement, support, and scrutiny and governance. So thank you.
Thank you. Right, the first question is from Councillor Pauline Giles, please.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. COVID has had, I believe, some positive points across the board work-wise, especially environmentally. And I'm interested in the fact that you're wanting to sort of like take on board the opportunities that virtual give you. I've noticed it said a crew of 4. Has this been workable, and will this stay, or was this just something because of COVID? It's just interesting to see that when you have different working methods, that sometimes it's just a bit of a light bulb moment. You think, hell, that does work. Yeah, we can implement that. I feel like in our whole world, in our own lives and everything else, COVID has given us a chance to sort of like step back and look at how we work and how we can embrace what's gone on, really. And the other thing is that I am absolutely certain G7 is a chance to showcase the top-notch services that we have in Cornwall. I have nothing but respect for our services, and I thank them for working so darn hard in the last 12 months.
Thanks, Pauline. That's really well said. I don't know who wants to answer that one, Catherine or Mark, about the crew numbers.
Yeah, no, certainly. Thank you, Councillor Giles, certainly for the recognition as well, and undoubtedly a huge amount of learning, reflection that we will be taking forward. So yeah, probably most significantly will be the use of the virtual arena. One of our biggest savings that we've actually had through COVID is a reduction in vehicle usage. mileage and ultimately a fuel saving and ultimately an impact on carbon reduction. So that's quite significant for us. Yes, in terms of crew and arrangements, it's something that we will certainly build into our full IRMP in the next year based on some risk modelling that we hope to undertake through this sort of coming year. But one thing that I will say is that we've had a great workforce that has enabled us to work sort of quite agile. So we have been able to move resource to sort of risk and need. So as we've talked about, supporting shielding members, and actually at a time where we had to put a business continuity arrangement in terms of stations being reduced staffing arrangements due to COVID, either positive cases or self-isolation, we were able to make Bobbin Community Fire Station 24 hours in terms of resilience. But that was very much achieved with working with the arrangement with our rep bodies and the willingness of our staff. But certainly an awful lot to take forward, and a lot identified in the HMI COVID inspection report, which sort of cited good practice, which we will certainly carry through. So hopefully I've answered your question, and thank you very much for your support.
Yes, thank you very much for that. And like flexibility going forward, I think is the key. And if they're embracing that, then that's brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the next question is from Councillor Martin Alvey, please.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Kath and Mark, for that presentation, and also for the report itself, which I think the document itself it expresses exactly where we are going in relation to where we've been, and I'm pleased to see how it recognises all the COVID responses. One quick question, and I appreciate this is only in draft form at the moment. Is there any reason why it can't have a few pictures in it? Yeah, yeah. Where we're talking about tri-service officers, perhaps a little photograph of one. Where we're talking about firemen driving ambulances, perhaps a fireman driving an ambulance, and maybe a few pictures of the new appliances and kit that we've got. But apart from that, words-wise, absolutely fine.
Yeah, and that is in itself always the problem with it being a draft. But yeah, indeed, we will have our firefighters ably. I think, like I said, one of the bits we are very proud about is our firefighters supporting the ambulance service and many other aspects of like the PPE delivery, the supporting the clinically extremely vulnerable people. So yeah, absolutely, Councillor, we will ensure that there are firefighters doing lots of things and great pictures, because a picture does paint 1,000 words. Yeah, indeed.
It does. Thank you for that. Thank you, Martin. Next question is from Councillor Fairman, please. Dominic Fairman.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Kath and Mark. Excellent presentation. So my first observation is I understand the consultation wasn't particularly well responded to, but I do wonder if having operational training as one of the options for what you should be doing when you're not fighting fires perhaps was less than useful, and perhaps in future consultations. I expect most people think that's what you would be doing anyway, and to tease out some of the other aspects, perhaps if the next time you do a consultation like that, we don't ask people whether they think you should be doing training for your operational roles, because, you know, I would imagine most people think that's a given. I'm interested about the on-call and the support for the South West Ambulance Service. So has that been deemed a positive thing by on-call staff? And is that something that, so how does that work? A swap picking up the tab for that? Is that so is that more opportunities for on-call staff to earn a bit of money? And I'd just like to understand, you know, whether that's a positive thing, whether it could possibly carry on post-COVID. You referenced the several times about the well-being of the staff and their mental health, and you also referenced the pace of change, which has been quite dramatic. So I'm wondering if you've got any evidence that the pace of change has been too fast for some people, or whether you're picking up increased mental health issues. And then finally, which I think is important for this committee, and I'd appreciate members' views on this. We are going to come to a bit of a scrutiny cliff edge at the end of the administration, and obviously the Fire Authority being 123 members is a weakness as much as it is a strength. We've had some initial talk about what we might do in the future. I put forward at one of me and Carolyn's meetings that I believe that membership of NOS should have some mandatory fire training as part of, as like planning does. And Democratic Services under Anita said, well, the appetite for mandatory training has not been great amongst members in the past. So I would like to ask the 15 members that are in the room whether they think that mandatory training for members of the next NOS committee around fire to bring people up to speed, you know, as a baseline would be a good idea and something that we could possibly make a recommendation going forward. So there's my 4 things.
Thank you, Dominic. I think before we go to Catherine, I think we actually broadened that out more than the members of NOSC, and said that it should be part of the member induction programme, and I think that will be a good idea, because in the new authority there will be 87 members of the fire authority, and they all need to have an overview of what that actually involves. A bit like corporate parenting, wasn't it? So I think yes, it would be interesting to hear what colleagues say on here, but I think it might be an idea to suggest as a recommendation to include it in the member induction programme, perhaps that last point. But can I come to Catherine or Mark to answer the other questions, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Chief, I'm happy to answer the first or the last 2 if we go in reverse order, and thank you. Yes, absolutely, Councillor Fairman. I mean, I'm a huge advocate for the local government agency training. I mean, I've seen you there, so you know absolutely. I buy into the fact that it's so important that fire authority members get that training. There's so much responsibility that I think that heightens people's awareness of, indeed. And I think, again, let's talk about some of the benefits of COVID that Councillor Giles was talking about, whilst we don't want to say that, but there have been, and I'm already talking to the LGA around having a virtual induction that actually, do you know what, it could encompass the 87 members that are indeed the fire authority, and then maybe kind of expanded on, as we said, those informal sessions for maybe the bespoke scrutiny as we move forwards. But yeah, absolutely, Councillor, I think it's invaluable to set the scene and the tone of what's expected, for sure, and that will also support with and it's not all about the HMI inspection, but we know that one of their their key points is looking at scrutiny and looking at the effectiveness of what we're doing and how we're being run. So it's important that people are informed about their responsibilities, for sure. In relation to the mental health part and the pace of change, yes, we have constant dialogue with our staff, and we invite opportunities for people to speak in different forums. We've got lots of staff networks that are set up, and also a people and resourcing cell. And yes, we have had people come in and saying this feels like 24/7, 365. And I think many people, if I was looking around the room now, I think everybody would be saying it feels like that. And indeed, our chief officer has said that, do you know what, we can defer a few things. We can just take our foot off the gas a little bit. And especially when G7 came in, that's a significant amount of work that we're going to have to incorporate. We have just reduced our staffing numbers by quite a lot in our support areas, and we recognise that you can't then ask people to do 110, 120, 130%. It's just not appropriate for their health and well-being. So we do have evidence, Councillor, and we have indeed. I won't say the pace of change has stopped, but the amount that we're doing whilst changing has endeavoured to be reduced. So I hope that answers your question, but I will indeed pass over to the Chief for the update on the ambulance parts, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you, Councillor Fairman, and for recognising the partnership with SWOST. I think it's a huge success story. There's been predominant sort of focus on the on-call, because certainly at the time when the request came through, we did have a number of on-call firefighters out of work, whether they were sort of self-employed. So it provided a great opportunity, and over the time we've supported 31 on-call firefighters being trained up to support ambulance staff in terms of driving ambulances. There's been some success stories, not for us, but for some individuals who have gained full-time employment with SWOST. So there's a benefit there. But one benefit that we're actually seeing is the increase in skills and knowledge in the medical arena that's sort of being brought back onto the stations for us. So, you know, there's sort of some unseen wins there for us. It is on a cost recovery basis, so it's not being done at any cost to us, but actually it's building that partnership. And as you'll be aware, we've got a shared facility at Truro, fire and ambulance, and it's just building on that relationship, which is very much two services focused towards saving life. That's ultimately our aim, our priority. And, you know, just one thing I'd sort of like to pick up as well while I've got the opportunity and speaking is just go back to Councillor Alvey's point as well with regard to sort of recognition of staff in some of the pictures. And just want to highlight really that it's not just operational firefighters, just that whole sort of one team service that makes up our service. So critical control staff, the teams that work in training, Phoenix. So, you know, there's a diverse team that we've got working with. And, you know, a point I'd really want to emphasize is it's about protection and prevention. You know, really, if if we're responding, something may have gone wrong somewhere along the line, whether it's lack of education. So from myself and our sort of senior service leadership team, it is very much protection, prevention. You know, educate, inform, and then hopefully we won't find ourselves responding to emergency. So I just want to sort of add that perspective to the answers as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dominic, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Councillors, just to let you know, I've got quite a long list. I've got Nikki Chopak, Matt Luke, Ian Thomas, and Mike Thomas. So Nikki Chopak first, please. Councillor Chopak.
Thank you, and thank you to Cathy and Mark for a very interesting presentation. Mine is obviously COVID related. I just there's sort of two strands to my question. One is obviously how has it been from a sickness point of view for staff, and how has that impacted on your general operating procedures? And also just with a slight sort of touch of interest, my son is a full-time police officer in the West Midlands, and he's not yet got a vaccine. He's not classed as a frontline worker, and considering that obviously I would class you as a frontline worker, and along with the fact that you are working obviously with SWAST, where you're exposing your staff to those risks, what are there any pressures being put on government or somewhere to get you further up the list for vaccines, or are you sort of classed as one of many in group number 8 or something, like the rest of us? So that's the sort of two strands of the question, really.
Thank you.
You're right with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So in relation to our sickness, we and I think this is reflective really of the whole of Cornwall. I don't think we started to feel that pinch really until we were prepared, and that was the great thing. Back in March, we I think as everybody was just very concerned about how this could go, and we were very prepared. And I think we actually had an exceptionally long run in to be prepared, but we didn't really start to feel that pinch until just after Christmas, which I think the whole of Cornwall started to experience. And I think that's when we started to experience what everybody else in the country had been probably experiencing for nearly that 9 months then. But we at the height, we had about 70 people off, either with COVID or, had some form of contact with people. And that's quite significant for us. But indeed, like I said, we were prepared. We had already set up a cell that every morning we would meet, discuss where potentially we had the gaps, and we could plug them with people. Because we'd stopped a lot of our work within protection and prevention and also training, we were able, as Mark said, to deploy those people to different areas. And one thing we did was as Mark has already said, we upgraded Bodmin to a 24-hour station to maintain that additional resilience, especially in the east of the county, if we started to see some of our stations maybe be impacted greater than it was. But no, we were at a quite critical point there after Christmas. But like I said, because of the preparations we put in place and because of the track and trace system, we were able very quickly to almost stop the person, find out where the trace had happened, isolate those people, and then kind of move forwards. One of the bits though on COVID is the impacts of long COVID, and it's very interesting. You use that blasé statement of, oh, you isolate for 10 days, then you'll be back. Do you know what? If you have COVID, you probably won't be back after 10 days. You might not be back after 10 weeks. So one thing that our people and improvement manager is doing is looking at, because COVID's here to stay, and the vaccination we are seeing is good, but indeed if somebody gets it, what are the support arrangements around bringing them back and supporting them? Because I think long COVID is certainly quite impactful and debilitating to people. In relation to the vaccinations, I think one thing that our chief is very clear about is how humble and respectful we must be. And there are plenty of people out there that are, we are frontline, but there are people out there that are very frontline. What we've got in place are ways and mechanisms to not only protect ourselves, but also protect the vulnerable people that we may be in contact with. And it's about reducing the transmission. But we indeed will nationally, we're putting the pressure on to ensure that along with our police officer colleagues, we are seen as a frontline service. But indeed, what we won't be doing is putting any undue pressure on, because like we said, there are plenty of people out there that are indeed, absolutely frontline, and we wouldn't. It's important to remain very humble and respectful, and just very thankful that there is indeed a vaccine.
And yeah, thank you, Councillor. Can I just also add, because you made reference to our on-call firefighters working with ambulance staff, we've been able to achieve vaccinations for those staff, and also we've introduced sort of lateral flow test into some critical areas as well. So certainly we have introduced mechanisms, but quite rightly, like I say, we are mindful that we do attend automatic fire alarms and do attend care homes and hospitals, and we've been very tight around our understanding and change some of our procedures to ensure that we aren't sort of community spreaders ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel very humbled. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. The next question is from Councillor Matt Luke, please. Matt.
Hi. Yes. Well, it wasn't a question really. Well, it was. The new kit that we bought with the pods and everything and so forth like that. Have we had, with all the weather we've had, have the staff had chance to use them, and what was the kind of feedback on it?
Yeah, sorry, Councillor, could you narrow down the equipment that you've made reference to, the actual fire kit or the appliances?
Yeah, we had the pods. We were going to invest in the pods, like the bushfire and the flooding and the sort of mountain rescue kind of stuff and that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one specific vehicle which at this time is still in build, unfortunately.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, there was actually a delay in the build itself due to the factory sort of closing down because of COVID itself. So yeah, that's specifically one vehicle, but I will sort of come back and confirm when that delivery date is due, but it should be well under the way. But again, as you've identified, a really innovative approach, one multi-purpose vehicle that can respond to 5-6 different incident types.
Okay. And I just wanted to back Dominic up on the training thing. I think even if we don't do it for a full council, whether we're here or not here, some of us, I think training for the NOSC Scrutiny Committee should be a definite, without a shadow of a doubt.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you very much for that. Right, the next question is from Councillor Ian Thomas, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mark and Catherine, for your presentations. Yes, indeed, it is a good document. There's a couple of things I want to pick up on, if I may, but I'll start on picking up on Councillor Fairman's suggestions. I don't like the word mandatory training because I need to understand what he means, because by way of example, not everybody could put on a BA set. Not everybody could go into a BA chamber, particularly if they were claustrophobic, etc. So the use of the word mandatory is probably a little unwise, although I do agree that elements of training could and should be provided. Can I turn also to Councillor Alvey's point about photos or pictures? Yeah, that would add value to a very good document anyway, but I think that would be good to see, and by way of recognition of certain individuals and roles as well. want to pick up on what Councillor Giles was saying about a change of policy, or is it a change of policy, reducing riders from 6 to 4. I have mentioned that before at a previous scrutiny committee, because with all due respect to you, Mark Hewitt, previous chief officers have insisted that we ride with 6, purely for safe methods of working, particularly I think in cases of persons reported. So I'd like to understand why there's been a change and if that change is going to persist. And lastly, returning to the document again, the pedantic part of me doesn't read every word necessarily, but picks up on a few. We need to do a search, or whatever it's called, across the document, because there are certain inconsistencies. By way of example, in some places on call has got an got a hyphen in it, and in other places it hasn't. In some places it's got capital letters, and in some cases it hasn't. Same with whole time. Reference made to the National Fire Service, and then in other places it becomes National Fire and Rescue Service. And lastly, my observation, bearing in mind I'm a bit of an old dinosaur and still can remember the days of fire control, in one place is the critical control centre is referred to as fire control. Yes. Thank you.
No,
Yeah.
thank you. Oh, sorry, Chief.
No, thanks, Councillor Thomas. No, I do sort of appreciate that detail, and we'll certainly go back through it with a fine-tooth comb again, addressing the inconsistencies that are coming through. And yeah, I guess the sort of the key point to pick up there in terms of the crewing, certainly our optimum crewing arrangement is 5, and that's what it has been in our integrated risk management program plan for this year. The 4 has been a control mechanism or a risk reduction mechanism through COVID. So the way that we've been operating is crews of 4. If there is a case of COVID and sort of requirements to self-isolate, we are working in lesser numbers, and certainly undertaking our activity of turning up to care homes for etc. It is a sort of an agreed control mechanism for this time, but we talk very much about optimum, and certainly as we work through this year we will be coming up with sort of planning assumptions, risk against resource, and certainly the new appliances that have been procured more recently sit 5 firefighters as opposed to previously 6 firefighters, and that's sort of affording sort of more space. So certainly, you know, we do very much talk about optimum through this IRMP until we sort of undertake some risk profiling. I hope that's okay.
Yes, thank you. Can I just come back on a point,
Yes.
Karen, about training for members? During my days in the service, I wasn't operational, but did benefit from some of the training. Because of the person I was, I didn't want to govern, probably the wrong word, govern people who could do a job that I couldn't. So I did have a crack at most things, including like rescuing a body from a smoke-filled BA chamber, standing on top of a burning container at HMS Raleigh. And I can assure you, the elements of fun are also tinged with moments of terror. Thank you.
I don't think we're suggesting that for us councillors at all.
I was going to say, Chair, we could combine the two. It's fine,
No,
but
yeah,
I think
thank you.
definitely. But yeah, I also think that learning about responsibilities in relation to the fire authority will also fill you with tinges of terror. But
Yes.
and just one point for Councillor Thomas, I think definitely not pedantic, Councillor. I would say more meticulous, and for that indeed we are grateful. So thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is from Councillor Mike Thomas, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much, Catherine and Mark, for your presentation and for your report. Just a few observations and a general question. And I certainly respect your comments about humility and be respectful regarding the issue of the vaccine. I think it probably is for us as councillors to champion you and argue that that as frontline service people, you should have access to that. But it's unfortunately, as we discovered through questions yesterday at full council, this is an NHS government decision, and we don't have an occupations-led vaccine programme. And I would say that we need both vulnerable people and also occupations like your own, because there is a sort of sense to this. And you indicated this 10-week issue for long COVID, which takes me to my question about, you mentioned about the G7 and the preparations. Are you able to comment on whether there will have to be extra staffing? Because clearly there may be issues as we get closer to that time and people haven't been had their vaccines. There could be staff who are sick because of that.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Thomas. Yeah, and be assured also that as a sector, I meet on a weekly basis with a National Fire Chief, so the National Fire Chiefs meet, and it's certainly a sort of a topic to try and sort of put some pressure at a higher level to achieve that. So certainly something that we are putting a little bit of pressure on and working towards. So that is taking place in that context, and I can give just a little bit of an outline in terms of our planning arrangements for G7. Like I say, it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be exciting. It will require some resource that we don't actually have in Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service, so I'm sure we will be seconding in some resource to support our planning arrangements and response if it's required. But one thing that we've learned through COVID is we've worked very agile. We've created cells. We've created cells that considers track and trace. We've created cells for availability, for business continuity plans. And what we've been able to do is create a cell for G7. So in the early arrangements, we've got some specialist officers sort of trained to a higher level of security clearance who work with our partner Blue Light colleagues. So at this time, we have formed a cell, but very much working in partnership. So, you know, we are keen that we're not approaching this as a one service response. So that work is taking place. And like I say, we'll just review some of our MP projects going forward, but yeah, assured, and we will keep updates coming forward to NOSC in the future around that subject.
Thank you. Thank you. If I could just mention the point about training, if I could come back to that. I think Dominic's raised a very important issue. I think that if at induction, things go very fast. My memory of induction is you're in and out and wow, fantastic experience, and you still can't believe you got elected. So I think you need to have definitely a mention of this, like corporate parenting, but then it has to be returned to on a fairly sort of annual basis.
Yeah. And
certainly for NOS members. I mean, maybe there's some possibility of actually having the meetings when we actually do have face-to-face meetings, actually at Sorvaden. For example, the West Cornwall CCTV group meet there. So it wouldn't be impossible. The issue of public access might be something to be considered. But actually, if we met at the fire station, fire control or the centre, whichever name is appropriate at the time. And finally, about the imagery, I think, yes, the idea of having images in the report are very important. But I'd also like to see more access to moving image, because I'm sure there are many people within the service who have got the capacity to make their own movies, and I think it would be really important for the public to actually have a visual impact of all the fantastic work that you do, and I don't think that would be too difficult to organise. I think that's all the points I wanted to make, and thank you again for what you've done. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to steal the Chief's thunder there now, because he actually highlighted us to it. But it's Dorset and Wilts that have actually produced exactly that, a video of their plan. Sorry, Chief. And it's something that you know, he said is there something we can do? Can't do it for this year, but I think that'll be an exciting opportunity for the next iteration of our 4-year IRMP, or indeed community risk management plan, as indeed it may well be then.
You may find you have hidden talent within the service.
Oh, we know we've got talents. Yeah, definitely. But
yeah, we saw that when we did the fire inquiry, Mike, because we had they did a video, because we couldn't actually physically go and visit the property in St Austell, and they provided a video, and it was absolutely brilliantly done. It was really, really good.
Would they pass the screen test?
Yes.
Would they pass the screen test? The question.
Definitely. Autographs being given, I think. Right, I've got a couple of questions, if I may, please, to I don't know whether it'll be to Mark or Catherine. We've previously heard of software modelling systems to support risk and evidence-based decision making to ensure appropriate and safe resource to the risk. But what progress has been made with that? That's the first one. The second one is, following a successful HMI CFRS, I always get that tongue-tied, COVID inspection outcome, what learning and different ways of working from COVID will you be taking forward as more efficient and effective ways of working? And with the forthcoming second full HMR inspection, if indeed any, what areas do you recognise still needs improvement, please?
Are you okay with the first one, Kath?
Yeah, absolutely, Chief. We've looked at 3 companies at the moment, and we've sent out a draft kind of specification as to what we would like them to be able to support us with and what we want, just to get an indication of how much. You know, we don't know if it's £10,000 or £100,000. So that's happened. Those meetings have happened. We've outlined the scope, and we are now beginning to get those companies coming back. There's 3 companies that are in the running that are used nationally, and that we would certainly suit our needs. So we're just getting those financial reports back and exactly what will be included within that. But there is a great degree of haste on this. It's something that we really want in place by April to really begin that analysis to inform our next integrated or indeed community risk management plan. So good progress, I think, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kath. And Chair, if I could sort of pick up the second part in terms of our COVID HMI inspection, some of that continuing work, different ways of working. One thing that the HMI CFSRS sort of stands for is very much around people efficiency and effectiveness. And we have actually taken through this year, sort of linked to our transformation in terms of our structure, a real opportunity to do some true activity mapping of the work that we actually deliver. So there's been a real focus on ensuring that we do statutory duty, we do it well, but very much in a way that we can do that effectively and efficiently. So I know we've sort of played it out a couple of times through some of the questions in the presentation, but it really is building on that in virtual environment in terms of engaging with businesses, because what we fully expect now as lockdown releases, hotels, bed and breakfasts open up, we want to make sure that they're compliant. We fully anticipate a very busy tourist season, and we want Cornwall to be safe. So very much working where we can on a virtual basis. And certainly in terms of, you know, areas for improvement that we're still very much working towards. And, you know, I'm grateful to Sophie for her support in terms of driving forward our IT requests. We want to work very much efficiently and effectively, and a lot of that will come down to making paper-based systems electronic. So that is very much a priority for us that we're taking forward. So hopefully I've answered your question.
Thank you. Thank you very much, both. And thank you. That's the end of the X's in the box. So that's the end of the questions, I think. So thank you very much, both of you. That was really interesting, as they always are. So thank you. Right, colleagues, we now move to the recommendation, and the recommendation is on page, where are we to? Page 13.
Can I add a recommendation, please?
Thank you. That'll be lovely. I was just going to come to you.
Okay, so hopefully you can see that screen.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
So the first one is as in the document. The second one is the one I'm trying to add. And so to address Ian's point about what sort of training it is, I've put it as fire authority training. So that's about being a fire authority member. So a fire authority training is offered to all 87 members early in the next administration, with it being mandatory, and I mean by that compulsory, for members of NOSC. Now, in the interest of full transparency, I have tried this with Democratic Services, and they've told me there's no member appetite for mandatory training. So as I'm now talking to members, I would welcome the feedback of actually, is there an appetite? Should this be something that NOSC takes, this seriously?
I think for my part, I'll open it up to others in a moment. For my part, I think the word mandatory is the problem, because we're all technically volunteers. You can't force us to do anything, if that makes sense. Although I agree, I think it should be. It's high. I would be happier with you to say being recommended for members of NOSC rather, or highly recommended rather than mandatory. I know with planning and licensing, that is mandatory training, and they can't sit on those committees unless they've undertaken that training. But I don't think we can make it mandatory, because we tried that with equality and diversity. We wanted to try and make that mandatory, and we weren't allowed to. But that's just my thoughts. I've got Martin Alvey first, please. Councillor Alvey.
Thanks, Chair. On the first little paragraph there, should we perhaps also include and take account of the comments made by the committee, or words to that effect? So that sweeps up the sort of the technical issues around commas and hyphens and also the pictures. As far as the training is concerned, I'm comfortable with that, actually, and I think the reason I'm comfortable with it is that, a bit like planning and licensing, we are carrying out a statutory duty in being members of the fire authority, in the same way that we're carrying out a statutory duty as corporate parents. So on the basis of the fact that we're carrying out a statutory duty, I believe that it's appropriate that training is mandated.
Okay, thank you, Danny. The next question is from Mike Thomas, please. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. No problem with the first paragraph. I do have problems with mandatory. I think required or expected would be more appropriate myself, because we are not in the same league, is perhaps the wrong term, as planning and licensing. But I respect the need for training, but the pressure of members on other members would be strong to say the expectation or the requirement is, if you want to be part of this committee, then you're going to have some training. But mandatory almost implies we're going to give you a test as well afterwards. I mean, maybe that's an idea. We could all have a test to make sure we pass the mandatory training.
Thank you, Mike. Next one is Matt Luke, please. Councillor Luke.
Hiya. Yeah, I agree with. I'll happily second the motion for Dominic, and I agree with Martin, and kind of disagree a little bit with Mike, because I'm on licensing and also backup for planning. You have to do the training, or else you can't do it. Licensing is different because it's semi-judicial, and therefore you've got to know what you're talking about, or else there are implications. But I don't think the fire service is any less important than planning or licensing to the council. If anything, it's way up there to be more important than planning, as far as I'm concerned. That's a dead loss nowadays. But we won't go into that. But it's on a par with licensing, surely. So I think I'm not bothered about the mandatory bit at all, personally. If you want to be part of this committee and you want to be committed to it, then you should have to do the training to make sure you're up to the right kind of scale to be able to do it.
Thank you, Matt.
So I'm happy to go whichever way the members. Wording wise, but I'll second the motion for Dominic, no problem at all.
Thank you very much, Liv. The next one is from Councillor Simmons, please. Sorry, I'm saying your name wrong.
Thank you, Chairman. Now, I agree with Matt and Martin. I take on board of what Councillor Thomas has said, that if you want to be a part of this, then we should know all about it. But we're not allowed on training unless, on planning, unless we have some training and licensing. And we to sit on this committee, or to sit on the planning committee, you have to have some sort of training. And the fire service is up there, I think, on the same standard as that. So if you want to sit on the committee, you should be prepared to have some training.
Thank you, John. And Malcolm Brown next, please.
Yeah, I think there's an important difference between this committee and planning and licensing in that planning and licensing are making decisions. We're making recommendations to the cabinet or to the cabinet member, and therefore I think the requirement for mandatory training is less. So I think I'm with what you said in your introduction, and also Councillor Mike Thomas. You know, I don't think it ought to be mandatory. I think if we said this was mandatory, then I think a lot of other committees would have to have lots of other things made mandatory as well. Yeah. And I think we have to be realistic about the time commitment that some councillors are going to have. Not every, you know, we're trying to diversify the membership of the council. Whether we will, I'm very doubtful. But you know, I think making it mandatory probably might be counterproductive.
Okay, thank you, Malcolm. Councillor Ian Thomas next, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Apologise for starting the ball rolling on the discussion over mandatory. I too would second the motion other than the word mandatory. Mike Thomas is expected, I think it's a much more suitable word. And part of my rationale is, if we're saying it's mandatory for this committee on fire and rescue, then why not trading standards?
Yeah.
You know, there's several other pieces where you know, training would be extremely valuable and beneficial. It's just the use of the word mandatory.
Yeah.
If expected or required was used, then I'd be perfectly happy with that. And as I say, Malcolm Brown always speaks wise words as far as I'm concerned, and I think he's absolutely right. You know, training for planning and for licensing is essential because of the legal status it has. And it's not to decry the fire and rescue service. I was part of it for 22 years. Mm-hmm. So, yes, I like it much better now. Thank you, Dominic.
Thank you, Ian. Cornelius Olivier, please. Cornelius? Okay, we'll go on to Kevin Towell next, please. I think you put your hand up rather than the next in the box, but Kevin was next.
Yeah, sorry about that. It's force of habit.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the comments I was going to make have already been made by others, actually. I just think that mandatory training is a sort of step too far. I think if we were to recommend training, that would be a better fit, because as others have said, it's the thin end, really. We'll end up having to make everything mandatory. All the other committees and all the other areas they cover, and as Malcolm said, this is a scrutiny committee. Mm-hmm. We recommend rather than make decisions. So I think that's getting the balance right.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. Very.
Chair, sorry, Chair. I'd kind of lost the place on the screen. Would it be all right for me to come in briefly now?
Yes, I did call you in, but you didn't. I know.
I couldn't hear you because I'd lost.
That's okay. Well, I'll come back to you next then, and then I'll go to Pauline afterwards. So, Cornelius, you go next, please.
Right. Pauline goes next.
No, you, Cornelius.
Oh, right. Okay. Oh, God, sorry. We've actually spent more time doing this than what I was actually going to say. But sorry, I could hear you, but you couldn't hear me. No, I don't agree. The point about planning and licensing is that one of the points about it is the majority of councillors are not actually members of those committees and don't have to be. So I think, to sort of imply a situation where you can't become a councillor unless you do mandatory fire and rescue training would be too prescriptive. Because at the moment, if you don't want to do mandatory training, you've got the option of not being on a planning or committee or licensing subcommittee. So I agree about the mandatory point. Thank you, Chair. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Cornelius. And finally, we've got Pauline Giles, please.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with requirement as well, and I think that, you know, it's something that that they ought to be looking at for all committees going forward. You know, for us to be able to do a good job from the get-go, we do need to know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, God knows what might happen, but there might be sort of 10 people new on this committee after May, and they have no idea of what's gone on before. And if they don't have any training, then, you know, it's a sad indictment from the council that they're letting people make decisions that they don't know what they're talking about.
Thank you, my love. Right, well, Dominic has amended. Thank you for that. We were sort of fairly split, I think, but I think several have said since he's altered it from mandatory to an expected requirement. I'm much happier with that. One suggestion, Dominic, the first one, could you perhaps say about having taken account of the comments made in the recording and in the minutes or something like that, rather than made in committee, just so that it covers all bases? Does that make sense?
What is the word debate?
Oh, yeah.
I think it needs to mention the recording. Oh, Joe is indicated. Joe Heather, can you advise us, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The appropriate wording, the wording that we usually use would be, so after be approved for publication, having taken into account the comments, and I would put as detailed in the recording and minutes of the meeting.
Thank you. That's detailed in the. You're quick at typing, Dominic. Brilliant. If it was me, I can type as quickly as that, but then I have to go back and correct all the spelling mistakes. So that's really good. Thank you. Right. So we've got this. These are our two recommendations, and they are proposed by Dominic and seconded by Councillor Ian Thomas. And we will now go to the vote, please. Joe, could you take us through that, please?
Chairman, could I just clarify I'd just like to clarify with regard to the recommendations, the proposer and seconder again, because I think Councillor Luke was proposing, was seconding first of all.
I beg your pardon. I'm sorry.
But we also haven't clarified whether Councillor Luke is happy with the word expected. So just for the live stream, could I read out the recommendations and then ask the proposer and seconder and then go to the vote? Okay, so the proposed recommendations, and I'll ask the proposer and seconder.
Order, Chair.
Pardon?
Sorry, Ian, what did you say?
Point of order.
Yeah.
The word "in" is missing from the first paragraph between detailed and the.
Detailed in the recording. Yeah, thank you. Good job you're there, Ian. Thank you. Over to you, Joe.
Thank you. So just to read out the recommendations, they are that the draft Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service Integrated Risk Management Plan 2019 to 22, Year 3 Review 2021-22 be approved for publication, having taken into account the comments as detailed in the recording and minutes of the meeting. Number 2, that fire authority training is offered to all 87 members early in the next administration, with it being an expected requirement for members of NOSC. And I would put my Neighbourhoods Overview and Scrutiny Committee, but I can change that. So do I have a proposer?
Yeah, me, sorry.
Thank you. And just to confirm, do I have a seconder?
Yes, Councillor Matt Luke, yeah, happy to second.
Thank you.
Okay. Chairman, if it's okay, I'll move to the vote now.
If you would, please.
So just moving to the vote, and we'll be voting on the recommendations that I've just read out, and I'll call out the committee members' names in turn. Please could you advise whether you vote in favour or against the recommendation, or whether you wish to abstain from the vote. I'll then count the votes and advise the result accordingly. So, first of all, Councillor Martin Alvey.
Martin Alvey, 4.
Councillor John Bastin. Councillor Bastin, are you there? We'll come back to Councillor Bastin. Councillor Malcolm Brown.
Malcolm Brown, 4.
Councillor Nikki Chopak.
Nikki Chopak, 4.
Councillor Dominic Fairman.
Dominic Fairman, 4.
Councillor Pauline Giles.
Councillor Giles, 4.
Councillor Stephen Knightley.
Stephen Knightley, 4.
Councillor Matt Luke.
Matt Luke, 4.
Councillor Cornelius Olivier.
4. Cornelius Olivier, 4.
Thank you. Councillor Carolyn Rule.
Carolyn Rule, 4.
John Simmons.
John Simmons, 4.
Councillor Ian Thomas.
Ian Thomas, 4.
Councillor Mike Thomas.
Mike Thomas, 4.
Councillor Kevin Towell.
Kevin Tower, 4.
I'll just go back. Is Councillor John Baston on the line?
He doesn't appear to be any longer on the meeting.
Okay. So, Chairman, the vote is out of 13 members who are currently on the meeting, and everybody is in favour, so the recommendations are carried.
Thank you very much. That's lovely, and thank you, colleagues, for that. We have gone slightly over time, but what I'm proposing now is that we take a 10-minute break, a comfort break. It's 11:33, so if we come back. Yes, thank you, Mark and Catherine. It's been really, really interesting. If we come back again, please, at where we do 11:35. So if we come back at 11:45, and we will start then with item 7 on the agenda, which is the COVID-19 localism and devolution update report. So a little bit later than expected, but if we come back again at 11:45, that would be great. And while we're waiting, if you could turn your cameras and microphones off, that would be really helpful. Thank you. See you all again in 10 minutes.
Because we're on a coffee. We're on a coffee break. Yeah. Caroline. Joanne.
Yes, John.
Oh, I got John Bastion on the phone. He's frozen. He's out. He's got onto the IT, and there's nobody there that can help him.
What? No, there's no answer, or they're saying they can't help.
Is there no? Oh, sorry. He said he's had to leave a message on the answering machine.
Right. Okay. Shall we give him? I'll tell you what we could do. We could give him the. I'm just wondering, Debbie, whether we could message him the telephone number and the conference ID.
Yes, that's certainly fine, Joe. I'll do that.
Yeah.
So then he can join by telephone, John.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. I don't want to say it over the live stream because it's the actual dialing code. So yeah, we'll message him the telephone number and the conference ID. Councillor Simmet. Oh, sorry.
Councillor Thomas, if you can hear me, you're sharing your screen. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
That's okay, darling.
Too many buttons on this computer.
Chairman, we've had contact from Councillor Bastin that he was lost his connection, so we're behind the scenes trying to reconnect him.
Oh, thank you very much for that. Right, colleagues, it is now 11:45, so if we can recommence, that will be brilliant. And we start off with item 7 on the agenda, which is COVID-19 Localism and Devolution Update Report. And I see we've got Alan and Simon here with us. I'm not sure who's taking the lead on this. Alan, are you introducing and then Simon going ahead?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'll just say a couple of words and I'll hand over to Simon. So
thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So this report aims to detail the activity of the localism and devolution team through what I think we probably all agree has been a most unusual of years through the pandemic. And I think through this lens, we wanted to reflect, on the value of the service and also probably most importantly, some key learning points. So what can we really learn from the way we've gone about things through the localism and devolution team. And we would welcome from the committee any comments or feedback on the activity of the team, but also probably in particular any learning points that we may have missed as well. So that's what we really want to capture to make sure that the service can be as effective as it can be going forward. So I think probably with that said, Madam Chairman, I'll probably hand over to Simon to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Madam Chairman, and good afternoon all. Thank you very much. So just in short, what we've got today for you is the report hopefully provides members of the committee with an overview, as Alan has just said, of the key activities that we've undertaken, supported by the localism and devolution team since March this year, and hopefully give some illustrations firsthand of embracing the Glyn Warbath Together We Can ethos. Majority of my references will be taken to Appendix 1 of the report that was in your packs today, and really just looking back at how those 4 principles under the strategy which this committee was critical in shaping has actually helped in realise some key critical outcomes for us this year, and particularly, as Alan's just said, minding of course of those challenges that we've seen during the year, specifically around COVID-19, but also whilst we've also needed to adapt and look at different ways of working to ensure that normal business as usual is delivered as well. So the main part of the report split into 3, which I'll just give you some key highlights on if that's okay today. So I'll go through for you the quick update on where we are with the strategy, which I know many of you will be well versed on. Also the work that we've undertaken in support of the COVID-19 pandemic, and then obviously, as Alan's just said, some of the BAU as well, with ultimately trying to make sure that we maximise any learning as we move forward, so that can help us through the delivery plan for next year. So if I just give you a quick summary of the localism strategy and vision and where we are now. So as members committee will be aware, we launched the strategy and vision on the 25th of January, which was a great success. And I think of particular note, Councillor Sykes noted, I think as the guest speaker there, that Cornwall offers significant learning for localism policy and practice, with localism within Cornwall advanced compared to other local authorities in England. So I think hopefully that is something that members are able to reflect and welcome comment on. As you know, the vision and strategy is documenting the principles of how Cornwall Council and, most importantly, all of our partners, including the town and parish councils and the voluntary sector, work together to mutually support each other and improve people's lives. You will, of course, be well aware that it was a journey that's taken us 3 years to get there. So started 2018 to get to that point where now it's been embedded and agreed. Part of that journey was us working with Lord Kerslake from Locality, who had the Commission of the Future of Localism, and also through the Voluntary Sector Forum, and also through CALC and Town and Parish Councils. I think what is worth noting for members here is throughout that engagement and research, there has been quite significant praise by a number of bodies on Cornwall's approach for localism in Cornwall, and the paper does refer to a number of those for you, including recent papers by Danny Kruger MP, reference the levelling up of our communities, Localis, and the all-party parliamentary group on faith and society, keeping the faith. So there were a number of pieces there, and I'm pleased to update Scrutiny as well that we are continuing to work with. So I've been speaking with MHCLG the last 2 weeks, and also the LGA, and both are looking at developing white papers on localism and the next steps, and are seeking feedback from Cornwall. So I'm making sure that we're linking in across there, so that one goes through. As I discussed, the principles, I think, through the strategy have been developed over the 3 years. So it wasn't a case of a new document, shiny, being delivered. We've actually been living and breathing that. And I hope that that's had a positive effect, and that those principles have really come to life in my mind through the response of the pandemic, where we have really seen that spirit of Glenwool Bath, together we can, coming into fruition. Also, just for note, and I'll circulate if it would be of help. Most recently, I've just been looking at some think tank work on Onward with their director, Will Tanner, making a comment which I thought was relevant to this paper, which was, as we emerge finally from the pandemic, we need not to just revive a flattening economy, we also need to take steps to empower, recapitalise communities to give people back a sense of belonging and rekindle the social networks and institutions upon which we all rely. So again, that was just something that was published last week, and again I think it shows that Cornwall are in good stead and in a good place with the thinking that we've got through the approach that has been endorsed through this committee and council. So that's the strategy piece. I think just to give you a couple of highlights of the COVID pandemic, which the report touched on. And again, we really thought that this was showing localism in action. So I think it's from the start, looking at that partnership piece. So whether it were council services, whether it was how we were working with the Association for Local Councils, the voluntary sector, there was a real spirit of bringing together and seeing how we could work collectively on that. Some of the more close to home examples of that, excuse me 1 second, I'm going to sneeze. No, I haven't. Right, okay, sorry about that. Was the shielding. So first time ever shielding was something that we came on board. So that was a principle that we took as something to try and shape, and very quickly through the team and with other council services, we were able to look at how we put that connection in, supporting over 26,000 of some of our most vulnerable residents, supporting with food packages, phone calls, linking in for support. We've also looked at how we supported people experiencing food insecurity, partially through the DEFRA grant funding of 650,000. But again, I think the thing that is really important is looking at the approach that was taken. So rather than just looking at putting food out, more about how, through the establishment of the Cornwall Food Alliance, we were then looking at a systematic approach to that would enable us to have a longer term, more robust approach to that. And clearly, whilst that DEFRA funding has been allocated, still much more work to do. And what's happening now is we're building on that mature model to see how we can take that forward. Of course, as members will know, we're really significant to COVID as well was our two-way communication, looking at how we brought divisional members, cabinet members, CLT leads together to ensure timely, appropriate communications were taking place, critical to support you in your vital local leadership role, but also to ensure that things were going in the right way and actually we could shape and move as we went forward. Also, we established the virtual CNPs to ensure ongoing business as usual. And as members will have noted, already we've seen some significant learning there about actually how the appropriate use of virtual meetings can be a support, with more other agencies being involved, and how that might be taken forward and things that we're looking at next. There's also the community chest, and just looking at how that morphed with the crisis scheme being put in, softening some of the previous guidelines so that we could be more responsive to how we could help people. And again, over 750 grants had passed through that scheme during that period, supporting over 350 projects. We've been embedded across a range of the COVID response cells, including enforcement cells, looking at how we could help with street marshals, looking at how we could support the Safer Towns approach. So there's been a number of pieces there. And as well, probably one that you might not always be cited on, but the work through the Safety Advisory Group as well. So whilst all of this was going on, of course, there was uncertainty about some of the large scale events that happen across Cornwall. So Boardmasters, Tour de Britain, the Galawan. And we were needing to rapidly looking at how we could make sure we were supporting those things and see how those went forward. Move on then, I think whilst all of that was going on, of course, we also had business as usual work to do. So continuing to be supporting and working with members and members of the community around specific local issues. There were also large pieces of work undertaken. So supporting the community governance review, with localism playing a really important part, supporting the community governance review for the parish governance arrangements in Cornwall, which was led by the electoral review panel. So again, critical there in supporting the communications, engagement events, and ensuring that all of that piece was going through. And obviously that's been absolutely critical, and we're just finalising some work on that with some snap boundaries now on the network panels and how that works. We're clearly linked in still and working hand in hand with with our colleagues in Democratic Cornwall, looking at that transition now. 123 to 87 members. So that's been looking at the fair pre-candidature information, looking at the member induction programme, and so on. As members will be well aware, devolution hasn't stopped. So whilst we had to stop a lot of our face-to-face meetings and some of that engagement, I'm pleased to say that we are on target for hitting our year end with just over 18 projects aimed to be completed now by the end of March. We've also taken on board new projects. So we had 35 in the plan. That's gone to 55 with new things coming in like the Falmouth Pavilion, Porthcurno Car Park, etc. And we are on target to look at getting all of those done by the end of June, which was something I know that this Scrutiny Committee had set for us. And we are now looking at the next stages. Again, communication's been critical for us. One of the things and a challenge I think this Scrutiny Committee set was how do we get the message out there? All network areas now have got a social media presence, and we are now on average hitting 240,000 views each month across those community channels. So really important on how we can get that through. Climate change, we're still very supportive of that, working with colleagues there. We did in the beginning of the year host a number of sessions on that, and we are looking to be picking those back up again to look at how we can do that. And the report just cites you onto a number of thematic pieces of work as well that we're doing, and sort of things that you might not have recognised before, but that, for instance, the Park Home Forum, when we identified the fact that there was a community almost in their own right that we needed to make sure had a voice and could link across. So that's, I'm very conscious. I had 15 minutes, Madam Chairman, so I've tried to canter through that report and just give you some of the highlights. But I expect, if I may, the conclusion I expect, and you remember me speaking before about burning platforms when we spoke about Coverack. And again, I think some of my reflections over the last 12 months is when there is that community-wide problem to be solved, whether a local emergency or pandemic, it's really interesting to see how wonderful our community our services all come together. And I think there's a real challenge for us moving forward is how do we, when we're developing now localism under the strategy and that new delivery plan, how do we help make that also our peacetime approach? And how do we ensure that that's part of our DNA, so that whenever we see problems, challenges and opportunities, we look collectively at how we bring the strength of the whole of Cornwall together to look at how we can support and deliver that. So thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Hopefully I've done that within time for you.
Yep, brilliant. Thank you. Well done. I'm not sure if you were here earlier on, but I did had a chairman's. I took a bit of leeway and had a chairman's thank you bit, and I did thank you then and Alan and all your teams for all the work, the wonderful work you've been doing. So perhaps if you can't sleep tonight, you could always go back at the recording and see that. But yeah, absolutely amazing. The way your teams have just turned and done whatever was necessary has been brilliant. Right, we'll open up for questions now, and I've got the first one is Cornelius Olivier, please. Councillor Olivier.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you for that presentation, Simon. The report does gives a very good picture of the very positive things that have been happening. Therefore, I hope you'll forgive me if I'll raise a few of the points of concern that I have. Firstly, I mean, I know Cornwall Council has been flagged up nationally as an exemplar for devolution, but the fact remains, if you were going to point to a flaw in our process, it's patchy, right? It's much more developed in some towns than others. But I mean, there is one parish I will name, Penzance, because I'm connected it with. I'm afraid the default position of the local parish tends to be to treat devolution offers from Cornwall Council like you would a used car salesman who was trying to pass off something dodgy on you. And I do think we haven't really got a mechanism in place for persuading the more recalcitrant town councils to sort of take on responsibilities. So it's a bit two speed at the moment, because obviously it's easier for Cornwall Council to work with the willing than the unwilling. So I'm not sure how you deal with that problem, but it is there, the patchiness. The other 2 points I wanted to raise was in terms of devolution, one of which came up at Cornwall Council yesterday. The DEFRA funded food poverty grant fund was a great success, right? Therefore, I was disappointed and did try to sort of remedy the absence of something to take its place this year. Now, I know we haven't got DEFRA funding at this time, but I do think we need to look on building on the success somehow of that DEFRA funded food poverty fund last year, so to keep those organisations sustainable. Now, I have actually got, after I raised the point at full council yesterday, Adam Painter has actually set up with a meeting with me on Friday week to discuss this. But I think it's something, it's not a good policy to give people a wad of money and then nothing. It's got to be ongoing. So I'm sure that concern can be met, or I'm pretty confident anyway. The final point is, in terms of supporting localism, is I think we've got a bit of a gap when it comes to supporting organisations who want to set up youth projects. It's another issue I've attempted to address through council, but at the moment, the attitude does seem to be a bit, well, we've got our commission services, nearly a million quid a year we spend on contracting out youth provision, and beyond that, we're not really doing anything. That seems to be, and at this particular time, after lockdown, the closure of schools and colleges and all the rest of it, there's probably never been a greater need to engage with young people. But at the moment, I think it comes across as a bit of a low priority. Whatever I've said about food poverty organisations, I think the council's been, on the whole, pretty good. I just think there's a gap in the budget this year. But I get the feeling that youth, and I'm not talking about us setting up a network of youth centres as a council, I'm talking about supporting organisations that want to do something like that. And I feel there is a gap there at this time. So those are all the things I wanted to say, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Cornelius. Simon, can you give reassurance on any of those?
Yes, please. I'd love to be able to come back on all three, actually. So thank you very much, Councillor Olivier, and really helpful. Shall I do them in reverse order? So if I could first, youth projects, really helpful that you've raised that. I'm actually I'm going out off the back of the localism strategy to meet all DLTs. To talk about the strategy with them and to understand how we embed that through everything that we do. I will most definitely be picking that up with colleagues in children's, because when I was going through the strategy with them, Councillor Olivier, I was really overwhelmed actually by the significant amount of work that they were showing me around engagement and how they were actually working with young people and ensuring that young people's voice was heard. So what I'll do through the localism strategy agenda is I'll make sure I link across with children. So I'm going to their DLT in March, and I'll be making sure that I put that point across. We've also said as well that on the network panels we are looking at how we can increase the voice of young people on those areas as well, and look at what that can be done. I know some of the network areas have already started, so thank you very much for that, and it's to give you assurance it's on the list, and I'll make sure that we follow that through. With regards to the DEFRA food poverty and that, absolutely. One of the things that we've actually already written a paper on is in conclusion of the funding being spent. And one of the things that we were really keen on in establishing that food forum is it doesn't stop there. So we are looking now at, so what is next that needs to be done? What are the things that needed? So is it just funding? Is it people? Is it resources? Is it intelligence? What does it need to be? And we're looking those conversations now, and through that food forum, bringing everybody together, we're having that debate. So again, it's not a parent-child conversation. It's a how do we collectively approach this for the long term? And that's taking forward, and it will be going back through the COVID governance to look at what we can do. So if there's anything that you would like in that conversation that you might be having, Councillor, with Councillor Painter, more than happy to look to get one of the officers that's working on that to attend as well, so that they can give you more insight into that piece. And with regards to the devolution, absolutely, the very principle is that it will never be an imposed, it's a working with. I'd probably have a conversation with you offline if you don't mind about Penzance. I feel that things are moving there now, but in general I think the relationships that we are developing are definitely moving forward and are moving in the right direction. So I'm positive about the traction that we're starting to get, and through this committee some of the challenge that's been provided about how we link things up more and have more of a place-based approach, I think will further enable those conversations to go ahead.
But could I come back briefly?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yes, and I mean briefly. I mean, what I'm talking about, you're talking about voices of young people. It's great that work's happening. I'm thinking of something more specific in terms of support for organisations that have projects in particular areas. The food poverty thing, yes, of course, we need to assess what's actually needed by food poverty organisations, but at the bottom, there will always be a need for some money. You know, whether it's for training or whatever, or advice, there'll always be a need for some money. And I should say at this stage, you know, I don't want food poverty organisations to be a permanent part of our community infrastructure. I want us to have a sort of social and economic system that means they're not really necessary except in the most marginal circumstances. And the point, yeah, and I should also say I don't wish to single out Penzance Parish Council as a particular bad boy, right? But just using their relative reluctance as an example, because I'm sure they're not unique in that respect. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Cornelius, and thank you for the questions. I'm sorry, I'm looking distracted. It's because John Baston is having difficulties getting in, so we're trying to sort him out sort of separately to the meeting going ahead. The next question, next colleague who wants to ask a question is Councillor Brown, please, Malcolm Brown.
Yes, thanks, Carolyn. I'd like to make a few points which are generally extremely positive, so there's no need for Simon to be worried about what I'm going to say. Firstly, I think I was the first person who was asked to approach Howard Sykes to be speaker at the conference because I know him, and I've had some feedback that people didn't agree with everything he said. Well, I would have been staggered if anybody had agreed with everything he said, because he's a good outspoken northerner, and I just hope that the remarks that he made were accepted in that spirit. I want to make a few comments about community network panels and how representative they are, because I think there are things that we ought to be doing. Firstly, I'm interested in the point in the report about broadening the membership. And I almost wonder if we ought to do something systematic. I almost wonder if perhaps officers could come up with a list of categories of people and organisations that ideally we would like to be active members of a community network panel, and then ask each of the community network panels in turn to go through them individually and see what further actions they might be able to take to broaden their membership. I also want to say a bit about parish councils, because probably the community network I'm involved with isn't unusual in that
and this is what life in cricket is, and toppers will know.
Somebody's got their microphone on. Sorry, Malcolm, go on again, love.
That's all right. I'm used to being heckled on Cornwall Council. That doesn't ever put me off. The point I was going to make was, with parish councils, certainly in my area, and I suspect that's usual, some attend every meeting, some never attend. I just wonder, given that we're having elections for parishes as well as Cornwall Council, whether some sort of campaign can be launched both before and after the elections to encourage parishes to engage more, because I suspect, I don't know, this may be a silly prediction, but I suspect there could well be a larger turnover in parish councillors than in Cornwall councillors, and probably a lot of new people will come in who'll be very keen, and this might well interest them. The other thing is, I think we're a bit complacent about comms, because social media gets to some people, doesn't get to everybody, and certainly my community network, I think, is failing to attract a wide enough range of people to its meetings. And to give an example, at the last meeting of Neighbourhoods Scrutiny Committee, you talked about antisocial behaviour issues in St Austell, and Councillor Luke grabbed the headlines for a few days after that. Now, we had a meeting of the community network panel not that long ago, when we got the chief inspector, one of the community safety officers, tried to publicise it a bit, but didn't get any more than the normal hardcore membership, whereas I would have thought if it had been promoted better, the room, the virtual room would have been full, the same as if we were talking about a controversial planning application. So I just want us to reflect on that. There's a section on calc, and one thing I would like to suggest for the next council, for this committee, is that perhaps we could have periodic visits by the chair and the officer from calc, because I don't honestly know a lot about what calc does, other than my involvement with them through the community governance review, which has been considerable, and I'm not denying that's a considerable part of their work. But my town council is a member of the larger councils group on calc, and even there, our representative, who is active, doesn't have a lot to say many meetings. I just get the impression either calc perhaps isn't as active as we would like it to be, or it's not disseminating. The next thing I wanted to make was that there's a section about good practice by other community network panels to our own, and to give an example, I hope Matt Luke is going to be pleased I've said this. I became aware about the work the China Clay Community Network Panel is doing for an economic strategy, and I asked Dick Cole for a copy of it, which he kindly sent me. And I thought this was useful because as a St Austell councillor, I want to know what the thinking in the China Clay area is, because our two areas are closely related. But it seemed to me to be a good example of good practice. I just wonder whether there might be a more formal way of sharing good practice. Just two more things and I'll finish. The community governance review, I think the report is accurate and fair. And one thing which I was remiss, the final bit of business relating to the community governance review took place at the Constitution and Governance Committee on Monday this week, and I did get thanks recorded to a number of people, but didn't highlight the community link officers, which I ought to have done and want to do now. I'd like that to be recorded, because whoever picks up this work in the new council, the community link officers are the best officers, one for sort of flagging up problems. And there are several members of this committee from areas where there were problems during the CGR, but also they're the best people to move towards trying to bring parties together. So I think the role of the CGR is going to continue to be, will be very important in this. One question is, I do understand that community network boundaries are having to be adjusted in some areas, and I was told on Monday that, Simon, you're doing this work. I was wondering when that's going to be concluded and when we're going to be told. And the final point is, I just want to commend the localism team for continuing the work on park homes. I know that's demanding and they're not always the easiest group to engage with, and I've had a problem in my own division during this council where the residents association folded, and that's, I'm really disappointed that happened, because it's then much more difficult to engage with them. So I do commend the localism service for the emphasis it does. I did sit in on part of the recent conference and do read the newsletters. I think it's really important that we do that, because they are another element of potentially disadvantaged residents who can get overlooked. So sorry I've gone on a bit, Carolyn, but I hope those are helpful points.
Thank you. Simon?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. So with regards to the network panels, I think that's an excellent idea, and I'll look to be taking that one forward. With regards to about representation, how we can broaden that, I think that supports some of the conversations we've had previously. Absolutely, I will link in with Calc actually and our comms team with regards to setting up a campaign about how we can encourage attendance at the network panels and promote that. So that's something I can definitely take away. I will look into the issue around network panels and comms. I'm quite disappointed to hear that one, Councillor Brown. So I'll look into that one specifically when I would have thought a topic, particularly in your network area, such as antisocial behaviour, didn't generate that. So that's something I'll take away as an independent action. Just with regards to your point on Calc, just for clarity from my own understanding, was that a suggestion that Calc, either an officer or one of their members, attend an overview and scrutiny, or was that through the network panels? I wasn't quite certain, so my apologies if I could get clarity on that.
I was suggesting that, subject to fitting it into the programme in the next council, that periodic visits by Calc to tell us what they're doing and answer questions, I think would help us.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Brown. Thank you. And then good practice. Absolutely. I think that was a activity that has been asked of the scrutiny group. So we are looking at the right platform to be sharing best practice and how that can go. So China Clay would most definitely, with their economic strategy, fit there. I'll pass on your comments. Thank you to colleagues who were supportive of the CGR. Boundaries, I'm just working up at the moment with Steve Foster. He's done a report with Dan Rebb on that. I think there was only a small number, and we were going to be writing, obviously, to yourself as lead of the review, and also to the relevant town and parish councils, and also to the chairs of the network panel. And I'm looking to ensure that that is discharged by the end of March, if that would be appropriate. And I'll also pass on comments about Park Home. So hopefully that's covered off all of your points.
Thank you, Simon. The next question is from Councillor Fairman, please. Dominic Fairman.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, good afternoon, Simon. We're 12:15. Firstly, I just want to echo Malcolm's point about park homes. I've got one in my area. I very much welcome the focus on them. They are very insular communities and hard to, often hard to reach. I do welcome that. And then secondly, and I'm going to try and choose my words carefully, so I'm going to talk a bit, I want to talk a bit about levels of support for voluntary food banks and food providers. And I think as you look at all this, I think you should, at the back of your mind, a bit, Connie says, well, nobody wants food banks, so that's very true. It would be better if we had a society that didn't need food banks. But a bit like COVID, there are some sort of silver linings to these sorts of voluntary support mechanisms. So, and the two I want to highlight is that we've sort of slid over the last few decades into a very unhealthy Western diet, which has had knock-on implications for the health and the adult social care. And the ability perhaps of voluntary food providers to not dictate, but to influence perhaps healthier diets shouldn't be lost in the in your weighing up. And also on the back of that, and I'm going to say this as a beef farmer, as you can see from my background, it's pretty incontrovertible that moving towards a more plant-based diet is not only better for you, but is actually a key way of tackling climate change. So I'll give you a little stat I looked up for some of my research this week. Your typical Western diet for one person requires about 3.5 acres of land at the moment. The same 3.5 acres could feed 30 people if they were all vegetarian. And I'm not proposing everybody goes vegetarian, but there's definitely a sliding scale there. Whereas if we can nudge people towards eating less meat, and I am a turkey voting for Christmas in this respect, but it has not only better diets, but it has a massive implication for carbon reduction as well. So there are some good top level reasons for carrying on this support. Anyway, that's the point I wanted to make.
Thank you, Dominic. I'm not sure it was a question as such, it was more of a comment, wasn't it, really? So go on to next question is from Matt Luke, please. Councillor Luke.
Sorry, scribbling some bits down there. One simple question, and then a couple of statements, if anything else, really. When we have the next Park Homes conference or whatever, each time it's been held before, it's been held on the same time as either a neighbourhood scrutiny meeting or planning or licensing or something like that. And I've missed the last two, and it's, so all I would ask is to double check next time that it's not on, because I've missed the last two and it's wound me up, but there, I'll leave it at that. As far as the food banks go, and having been part of that and dealing with it and so forth, and some of the people that come and the food that's offered, they look at you blankly as if they have no idea what they're meant to be doing with it. Because, some of the younger ones, they live off takeaway food and live off, prefabricated food, shall we say, from supermarkets and whatever. And when you hand them a couple bags of rice and some vegetables and something else, they look at you with no idea what they're going to do with it. And they haven't, because they haven't got a foggiest clue. So whether we could, scrub up some kind of 10 easy recipes or, healthy, easy to make recipes or something like that would help some of these people that are, dealing with stuff they never had to deal with, and literally they don't know how to feed themselves. And that is the case. It's as stupid as it might sound. They do look at you blankly like, well, what do I do with this pack of veg? And I agree with what 99.9% of what Malcolm said, and he asked all the questions I was going to ask. So well done, Malcolm, for getting in there first. And yes, I agree with what he said, and with what Dominic said as well. As far as the vegetarian stuff goes as well, that's educating people into what they can do with the food we're giving them to a certain point. It's because a lot of them haven't got a clue.
Good point. Yeah. Thank you, Matt. Thank you. I don't think again there was a question as such there, but points to take on board, Simon, I think.
Yeah.
I've got Pauline Giles that's going to come in a minute, but she'll hopefully be able to address that, because I know she runs cookery classes and things for people that are disadvantaged in her area. But I've got Mike Thomas first, Pauline, so I'll come to you in a minute if I may. So Councillor Thomas first.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Simon. Good to see you. Can we go back to Councillor Olivier's points about young people? I think there's two dimensions to this. One is the democratic side, which I think we were discussing, and also the issue of supporting youth work. So I think there's two very important issues there. Is there any mileage in looking at the youth parliament and see where there's potential for Cornwall Council to actually have youth members from each community network, so that you could create a proper organisation that actually represented the young people from their areas? At the moment, they come from west, east and central, and they don't have any real connectivity with the areas that they represent. So that's just a suggestion, that the 19 or so community networks actually have a young person that could be elected by working obviously with the schools or even separate from the schools. And do we have access to money? Do you have a budget to support all those groups that are really working with young people? We don't have an army of youth workers anymore, but I am conscious from my own involvement that a lot of these groups are going to be doing some of the stuff that Councillor Luke was referencing, and helping young people to learn to cook in situations as well. So really, it's to say, is there money in the budget to support these groups, because we don't have the youth workers? So that's a particular question. And also to reinforce what Councillor Malcolm Brown has said about our network officers, our community link officers. Absolutely fantastic, as Karen will know, Councillor Rule will know. I find I would not be able to do this work that I've found myself doing without the support of our community links officer. Absolutely superb, and they all should have a pay rise, in my opinion.
Good job we didn't say that before the budget vote. Simon, did you want to come back on any of those, please?
Well, a regrading there, regrading.
Thank you very much.
They are well respected, and they are well remunerated already. I think, Mike, that their contribution is being acknowledged, isn't it, Simon? I'll come to you.
So thank you, Councillor Thomas, for those points. Great idea with regards to the Youth Parliament. I know Councillor Hannaford has also spoke to me about that, so absolutely, that's something we can take forward, and I think making that geographical link in as well would be really helpful, and I can definitely link in with that with colleagues in children's as well. With regards to the budget piece, within the localism budget, no. But again, I think one of the things that the strategy is doing, and the reason I'm going out to all of the directorate leadership teams as well, is talking about how we start to look at things across system and how we link those pieces together. So in the same way, in my response to Councillor Olivier, I'll be linking both your comment there and Councillor Olivier's together when I'm going and talking to that directorate team to talk about how we could do that. And of course, I will most definitely pass your comments back to the community link officers, and more explicitly to Max as well for yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. No, I'm going to bring in Pauline Giles next, please, because Cornelius has already spoken once. Pauline, I know you run cookery classes, don't you? I think you told me that before. So can we come to you, my darling?
Hopefully, I've turned on my screen, and I hope that you can hear me and I don't disappear on you.
No, we can hear you, my love.
Going on from Councillor Luke, sharing best practice. So, we're part of the Fair Share Alliance, and we get given food to give out in our community. And there is always lots of pasta, lots of tinned tomatoes, lots of tuna, lots of sweet corn. And if you put it in a bag and give it to these people, they just look at you. Because we have a generation now who have small children who have no sort of idea how to put a meal together. So just giving a random bag of stuff's just not working. So, we were lucky to get some of the government funding via Cornwall Council. So we subsidise what is given. So hopefully you'll be able to see this. So we've done tuna and pasta bake.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
So that they're given an option to be able to use 3 of the things that they don't know what to do with. So we've done spaghetti bolognese. So I've subsidised it with mince, because they're using the spaghetti and they're using the tinned tomatoes that we've got thousands of tins for. But also they're learning skills. So they've learned how, when we've had lots of eggs, how to make meringues. They've made pastry for quiche. Over the next 2 weeks, because of St. Parents' Day being either side, we're making Cornish splits, saffron buns, cocktail pasties, Cornish fairings, because this is about giving them a skill and giving them some of their heritage as well. The kids are loving it. I think we're on I think it's week 9 now. The parents are engaging, so we give them what they need. I print all these off, laminate them so they can wipe them off, so these children can go back to these. Parents have got hold of me and said, I got up on a Sunday morning because I teach on a Saturday. What are we going to do today? And the children are saying, can we cook again? That's just
brilliant,
empowering. You know, it's given them an opportunity to do something. So they've got the recipes. We're teaching the parents to spend quality time with their kids, and they're achieving a meal together, which then they sit down together to eat. So you know, this money that's been given out, it's all very fine and dandy to, yes, give people a bag of food, but if we can get into the routine of doing this, you know, I do my teaching online. Everybody joins in. I have 25-30 families every weekend, but it's recorded and it's up on the Recycling Page's Facebook page for anybody to go onto. So no matter where you live, I know one of my friends in Australia, she's going on for the Cornish stuff that's coming up. So we also recycle all the kitchen equipment because it's brought into the shop. So they don't have to buy rolling pins or bun tins or anything like that. We make up a box so that the children have got it so that they can put their hand to it. So that's me saying best practice as far as I can see. The one thing that I did want to ask Simon is, and going off a little bit on a tangent, is enforcement over Easter. Obviously, Boris has said that, you know, we are closed for Easter. Are you going to send every man and his dog out over Easter to ensure that we are not absolutely hammered with holidaymakers?
Thanks, Pauline.
Thank you, Councillor Giles, for both of those. So firstly, I think I will be, if you're happy for me to do so, I'll link in with Guy Thomas, that's leading on the food piece at the moment, and ask if he could link across with you, because I think some of the points that you've touched upon and linking across with other councillors' feedback could be really helpful. And if you've got some tools and approaches that are working, absolutely, it would be fantastic that we could get those across to the Cornwall Food Alliance and look at how we can embed those. So firstly, that will be in action. With regards to enforcement over Easter, obviously now we've got the roadmap that's currently being reviewed, both within the council's COVID response to how we're doing that, and that will have gone to the lead of the enforcement cell, and I know that they're working on that now, and it's also been discussed at the multi-agency groups as well. So absolutely, we'll be looking at how do we now respond to and ensure our resources are best allocated to that roadmap so that we can keep that message through. And I know that public health are very clear that the messaging that we need to do is let's not get complacent now. It is still absolutely important, critical that we maintain the hands, face, space approach, and that we do that through. So I don't have the exact details for you at the moment, Councillor Giles, because it is still something that's obviously very fresh and is being worked through, and I know that we've got a specific conversation on Monday that we'll be looking at what plans are in place.
Thank you. Just coming back, you know, I mean, I'm not trying to be offensive to anybody that will be coming down on holiday, but we are still in lockdown, and we've seen what happened when we had that little bit of leeway last time. You know, we've come so far as a county this time, and I don't want to see it slipping back because our economy can't take another lockdown. Thank you.
Pauline. And thank you for all the work you're doing. It sounds amazing. It's really inspirational to get the families back working together like that again. That's amazing. I know you've told me about that in the past. That's why I was glad you were here today to put your bit in about that. Cornelius, you've already spoken once. Is it something very quick, because we are running a little bit late for time? But can I come to you, Cornelius Olivier?
Yeah, very quick. First, I'd like to reassure Dominic that as long as I'm around, there will always be a market for beef farmers. I'm sure you'll be glad to know that. Or a small one in my case. In response to what Pauline was saying, I think, you know, I think it's fair, even if we're short of time, to applaud her efforts.
Yes, definitely.
in this field. You know, I'm really so impressed by what she's doing. So I'm not deprecating what she says at all when I hark back to when Shore Starts were flourishing before austerity came in. A prominent part of the services they offered was nutrition and cooking classes. They were happening in every large town and some of the smaller towns in Cornwall, that kind of training, which she is doing such a great job providing. So also I'd like her to share, I'm putting out an appeal for donations to Fair Share, you know, as they seem to be the private donations, charitable donations to Fair Share. If somebody could circulate an address for that, for somebody to make donations, and internet, email, website, whatever. That would be very useful for me. And finally, there is a point coming up on what Malcolm said about town council boundaries. Some people, quite a lot of people, are still very unclear about what boundaries elections are being fought on if they live in towns where the Cornwall council divisions have changed considerably. So, for instance, in Penzance, people until quite recently were under the impression that the town council elections would be fought on the existing boundaries rather than reflecting the new Cornwall council divisions. I was surprised that there was confusion about this, but it doesn't seem to be the only place where this is happening. So could we ensure that where the boundaries for town council elections are changing, that they're aware of this? Because they weren't in Penzance until last week, basically. Okay, that's all right. Thank you.
Thank you, my love. And that's all the questions that I've got. So I'm wondering if Dominic has got the opportunity to share his screen, whether he's had a chance to formulate some sort of recommendation for us. Oh, look at that, brilliant.
The recommendation in the pack didn't seem to make much sense post the discussion. So I've changed the first recommendation a bit, just to say that comment and feedback as detailed on the recording and then the minutes are taken back by the localism and devolution team. And then secondly, if people support it, Malcolm's suggestion that the Cornwall Association of Local Councils are invited to all future Neighbourhoods Overview and Scrutiny Commission meetings that include reports regarding localism and or devolution.
Right, have we got anybody that's happy that wants to comment on that? Sorry, I'm just answering a text at the same time here. Timings. Can I have are you happy to propose that, Dominic?
I am.
Thank you, my darling. Could I have somebody to second that?
I'm happy to second that, Councillor Giles.
Thank you very much, my love. Right, so we've got, is there any other amendments to that, or is everybody happy to go to the vote on this one?
Carolyn?
Yes?
Could I suggest that we add a first recommendation thanking the localism team for the work done during the pandemic.
That would be brilliant.
No, because that isn't even covered in the recommendation, but I think that ought to be the starting point of what we resolved today.
Yeah, that sounds really good, Malcolm. Thank you.
You want to include the community link officers, or are they part of the localism team?
They're part of the localism team. Committee just formally thank the localism team and their colleagues, or just I mean it's Alan's team as well, isn't it? They've all worked together, but the wider team. I mean the enforcement team. Is that okay, Malcolm? Is that what you mean?
That's fine. Maybe being very pedantic, if we say thank the localism team for all of their hard work so far.
Yes.
Because we're not out of it, whatever some people are saying.
Okay, right. So that's good. Thank you for that, Malcolm. So Dominic, are you still happy to propose with that in there as well?
Yeah, happy to do that. Yeah.
And Pauline, are you still happy to second with that in there as well? So there's 3 recommendations.
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much. So could I possibly ask Joe to come in and do the vote on this one, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just with regard to the recommendations, it might be worth, with regard to recommendation 2, rather than putting a taken back by the localism and devolution team, you might be better to put taken into account. So that you're being a little bit stronger there, that actually your comments are being taken into account. And just to clarify recommendation 3, I'm just sort of thinking how calc member or calc representatives would be involved. So from my perspective, it would, I'm thinking you're thinking just as an observer?
Yeah.
I think that Sarah Mason has been along a couple of times if we've had something that Sarah, as their officer, has come along if we've had something that we particularly needed their input on. So that's already in place. I mean, we could just sort of say that there's a standing invite if you want to, or something like that. I'm happy.
Chairman, I think that's where I'm coming from, because previously when we've invited Sarah Mason from Calc to attend, then we have it's been a specific item on the work program where we've invited her, so that's why we would expect her to speak. So I'm just trying to clarify that if there was a standing invite, that she wouldn't necessarily be expected to speak because you would be reviewing a Cornwall Council report and not a council report. So I just want to get that point across.
Is that clear enough there, or do you need it worded differently?
I think if we could put in observers, that would be useful.
Yep. Lovely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And Dominic and Pauline, are you both happy with that still?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Right. So we're ready. Sorry, who's that?
Sorry.
Malcolm?
Yeah, I did. Sorry. I'm not happy with this.
Right.
It may be the majority view of the committee, but this has shifted a lot from what I said originally, which was to invite Calc periodically to update us on what they're doing. Now, I think inviting us to meetings when we decide to have them and when they just listen, I think that's insulting. Okay. You know, I don't think that's right. You know, I just wonder, you know, Joe may want to help me on this, but
yes,
I just wonder if. I think it's right to invite them to meetings that affect them, but I think we also, but if we could add at the end, and to give periodic
updates
and to give periodic briefings to the committee about their activities. I want to know that what Calc is doing, because they're our partners in making localism work.
So
Joe, can you help us?
Yes, Chairman. So there's two options. You could keep what you've got and put as participating observers, or it may be that you just want to change the slant of the recommendation and have that the committee can. I'm just sort of talking off the top of my head, but that the committee considers adding to its work programme periodic updates from Cornwall Association of Local Councils. Then you've got it. You've got that consideration then from it being actually, as Councillor Brown is saying, what Calc want to say, as opposed to them being a participating observer. And I think from my perspective, I was saying that instead of having them coming to each localism and devolution item.
Right, so you're going to get rid of to all future neighbourhoods then, yeah?
I think that's where Councillor Brown is coming from, that he would rather have items specifically so that you can talk to Calc, as opposed to them coming along and maybe saying 2 or 3 words about a localism and devolution item. That's where you're coming from, Councillor Brown?
I'll just add one more sentence, and I'm not making a point here, I'm just making an observation. We probably don't spend as much time in this committee talking about localism as we do about the fire service. And you know, the sort of localism items tend to come up on an ad hoc basis. So I think the way this is worded now, that satisfies me, and I would hope it would satisfy the rest of the committee.
So leaving it as it is now, yeah?
Yes.
Right. So Dominic and Pauline, are you both happy with the wordings?
I am.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Yeah.
Thank you. So now we'll go to the vote, please, if we may, Joe.
Yeah, and I was just, sorry, Chairman, to be pedantic, I was just going to say that rather than that the next administration considers, that it would be that the committee considers.
The next committee considers, yeah.
Or just the committee considers.
Oh, yeah.
And you could put in future work programmes.
Brilliant.
And one other thing you could put is that just thinking about the first one, and sorry to labour the point, I'm just reading that again. I'm just wondering whether it would be useful so that you haven't necessarily invited them to every single item. Would it be about relevant reports?
Yes, probably it would. Meetings that include relevant reports.
You're nitpicking.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dominic, we're giving you lots of.
Sorry.
Okay. Right, so the recommendations as we've got them now are that the committee would like to formally thank the localism team for all of their hard work so far during the pandemic. Number 2, comment and feedback as detailed on the recording and in the minutes are taken into account by the localism and devolution team. And thirdly, Cornwall Association of Local Councils are invited as participating observers to all future Neighbourhoods Overview and Scrutiny Committee meetings that include relevant reports regarding localism and or devolution, and that the committee considers including periodic updates from CALC in future work programmes. Is that okay?
Yes.
So if we could go to you for the vote, please, Jo.
Yes, and can I just confirm that Councillor Fairman's happy to propose that and Councillor Giles is happy to second?
Yeah, so long as you finish tinkering.
Second.
Yes, I have. And Councillor Giles, I didn't hear you. Are you happy?
Yeah, I'm happy to second.
Thank you. Okay. After much ado, I will now go to the vote. So once again, I'll call your names in turn. Please, could you confirm your name and advise whether you vote in favour or against the recommendation or you wish to abstain. I'll then count the votes and advise the result accordingly. So first of all, Councillor Martin Alvey, please.
Martin Alvey 4.
Councillor Bastin.
John Bastin 4.
Councillor Malcolm Brown.
Malcolm Brown 4.
Councillor Nikki Chopak.
Nikki Chopak 4.
Dominic Fairman.
Dominic Fairman 4.
Councillor Pauline Giles.
Pauline Giles 4.
Stephen Knightley.
Stephen Knightley 4.
Councillor Matt Luke.
Councillor Matt Luke 4.
Cornelius Olivier.
Councillor Cornelius Olivier 4.
Carolyn Rule.
Carolyn Rule 4.
Councillor John Simmons.
John Simmons 4.
Councillor Ian Thomas.
Ian Thomas 4.
Mike Thomas.
Mike Thomas 4.
Kevin Towell.
Kevin Towell 4.
So, Chairman, all members were present to vote on this those recommendations. So the vote is out of 14, and all have voted in favour. So the recommendations are carried.
Thank you very much. That's really good and a good bit of a debate there. And thank you, Simon and Alan, for putting that report together and presenting it. So brilliant. Thank you both very much. We now move on to the next item, item 8, which is the Council's Farm Strategy Annual Report. And I believe we've got Johnny Alford with us to help with this one, and Stephen Morgan, is it? And Adam's there as well. That's lovely. So over to you, Johnny. Thank you.
Well, I think I'm going to defer to Adam in the first instance
right, sorry,
to
yes,
introduce it, and then I'll
My
do some of
apologies,
the heavy
Adam. Sorry,
lifting. That's fine.
No, we'll be quite quick. Hi, Carolyn, and good afternoon, committee. So yeah, you'll have seen this annual report in front of you. So this is the first one of the sort of the new changed way in which we're reporting county farms. So we have laid it out that it is the 4 ambitions across the new way that we're reporting this as far as so just looking at the front pages. So yeah, the 4 ambitions around the new council farm strategy. So you'll see it's a farming futures, environmental growth, vibrant communities and a sustainable estate. So it's broken down in that way and hopefully is fairly easy for members to read and understand. So I will hand over to Johnny just to whip through, just pulling out a few salient points from the report just for members, and then we're very happy to take any questions and go through it. So thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you. Over to you then, Johnny. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Adam. Good afternoon, everybody. So this is the first annual report. I think for me, the highlight is that the report reflects steady progress in delivering the strategy. And I feel in writing it and putting it together that there are really sound and good foundations in place for us delivering this 10-year business plan, 20-year strategy. I think also for me, in preparing this annual report, is giving me a real sense of what we need to prioritise in year 2 to begin to move that steady progress into something more dynamic. So let me take you through the report, which is Appendix 1 in your pack. And as Adam said, we've reported against the 4 ambitions that we established through the inquiry panel that the Neighbourhoods Scrutiny Committee put together back in 2018. So farming futures is our first ambition. Retaining that USP, that unique selling point of the council farms estate, is that we look for and support new entrants who have all of the skill sets to be new farmers for the future, and give them an opportunity to farm in their own right. This year, in the 12 months, 1st of April 2020 through until 31st of March 2021, we will have achieved 8 new lettings. 6 of those are new entrants to the industry, and by that we really mean people who have been developing their skill sets, their technical knowledge, their foundational herds and stock, and are now bringing all of that together into one individual holding for the first time. They probably rented blocks of land across parishes, and bringing it all into one holding with one set of farm buildings enables them to bring to consolidate and to become more efficient and effective in their management. We have one re-entrant to the industry, somebody who left the industry and worked in an allied industry and has come back into dairy farming. And then finally, one progression. So one tenant has moved from a small holding on the estate onto a larger holding, and reflects the ability of the estate to bring people in and start them, and then to see them move through to something bigger. So actually a very exciting year for us in terms of farming futures. So the farm at Scoria, Glencrest, is the progression. Our previous tenant there bought a farm, left the estate, and that created the opportunity for an internal progression. Fenton Fenner Farm at Newquay creates a completely new model for letting. We've let that to a single man tenant, who in turn is going to have a series of smaller subtenants, all of whom will be new entrants, all of whom will be growing mainly food products, and one of whom will be developing a tree nursery, which we hope will move towards supporting the Forest for Cornwall ambition to plant the trees in Cornwall. So that's really exciting, and again part of the way that we can link the farms estate into what the other parts of the authority are doing. And Carvinick Farm at Gorran, where we've let a bare land farm, 60 acres and set of buildings, to a local man doing exactly what I described earlier, farming a series of separate blocks of land, him and his wife, and they brought all that together into one holding. They live in the parish, they've not needed to move house, and they brought all that together. While we were interviewing for that farm, we interviewed a really able young man, but we couldn't give him Carvinick Farm because he came second in the interview process, but we have been able to sort him out with some additional land in the parish which should come vacant, and so the ability to think on our feet and create new opportunities with that ambition about showing new entrant opportunities has been really effective this year. It has been a good year for re-lettings. It's actually been a very busy year, and letting 8 farms in 1 year is actually very tiring and very time consuming. We're not expected to be quite as busy next year, but it shows this regular rolling pattern of lettings, and on average we let about 4 to 5 farms a year. So I suspect if we take year 1 and year 2, 8 in year 1, probably 2 or 3 in year 2, we'll have averaged 5 over that 2-year period. Environmental growth, the next ambition, very much the focus this year has been around carbon, understanding the base carbon footprint of the farm's estate, and to do that we worked with Duchy College with their carbon toolkit calculator, and provided them with data around the individual 90 farms that we've got, the level of livestock, the type of arable activity, and they analysed 4 of our individual holdings in detail, and then they extrapolated that data through for the 90 farms. What we've identified is that between 80 and 90% of the carbon released from the farm's estate is through livestock production, and that our carbon footprint is in the region of 43,000 tonnes of carbon. Now, I have to confess to you, I do not know what 43,000 tonnes of carbon looks like, feels like, or what it means. But that is really part of year 2's work, is to interpret all of that and to bring forward an understanding and an action plan as to how we will begin to mitigate that carbon through a balance of reducing carbon and also increasing sequestration or carbon absorption, so that we get the net position balancing out. So that's really the top priority that we're working on there. Carbon sequestration is a combination of tree planting in one respect, but also will be about crop choice, moving from some of the short-term rotation grasses to longer herbal lays, which fix more carbon and hold more carbon in the soil. You may, if you read farming press, have come across no-till activity. So the concept that you no longer plough before you plant, but you minimum cultivate, you just break the topsoil and plant into that. That again holds carbon in and doesn't release. It's all part of the skill sets that we need to be bringing forward for our farm tenants. So that's been the carbon footprint. But in terms of environmental growth, other activity, we're still pushing ahead with the biomethane project. So the ambition to have 6 farms where we capture the methane which is released from the slurry lagoons, capture that, draw that away from a covered lagoon, and then that gas is then treated and turned into renewable energy. And that's a piece of work that we're doing with a private commercial company called Bannerman's and with Cormac, who we hope will be the end users of the gas. We've got a single farm wind turbine erected on one of the council farms now on the A30 at Fenton Teague, and we have a number of solar companies who are talking to us about small scale and large scale solar farms on some of our land, and we are seeking to work that in with our land management activity and our tenancies so that we don't displace tenancies, but we create the opportunity for solar farms where appropriate. Let me move on then to vibrant communities, which is the third ambition. So this has really been the unknown activity, really. As we were putting it, I didn't realise quite how much we were doing in terms of vibrant communities. We've listed out what we've done. We've got 4 examples of where we have utilised the farms estate to support and encourage and work with local communities who in the main have come to us with an ambition, saying we're trying to achieve something, and we have then shaped our land management activity and our decision making to facilitate that, because we recognise the importance of bringing more people onto the council farms estate and getting the benefits, not just our fixed term tenancies. And so those are listed there, a mix of local growing groups. The one which is quite interesting for me is the wildflower growing, where we're working with Eden. We're working with our transportation team who are building the A30 St Austell Link Road, and one of our farm tenancies are growing the wildflowers, which will then be planted out across the verges to reduce maintenance. So very exciting, again, cross-curricular, if you like, in terms of what Cornwall Council does. And then finally, sustainable estates. So this is about the economic sustainability, the environmental sustainability, social sustainability. And our focus here is really around the whole farm plans, capturing and recording the natural capital that exists on our estate. So the wetlands, the woodlands, the running water, the streams and the rivers, where we've got SSSIs, our hedgerows, capturing and recording those so that we can protect them, we can maintain them and enhance them through a consolidated land management approach set out in the whole farm plan. Now, importantly, those whole farm plans are being shaped so that our farm tenants can use those to support their application into what will be the future DEFRA environmental land management scheme, the ELM scheme. So these aren't just documents which will sit on the desk or the shelf and get dusty. They actually will be usable management plans which will feed other activity on the farm. We will also, having identified some of the key outcomes, we will capture those in management agreements, either through the tenancy agreement or through side letters with the tenants, and agree what we will achieve jointly in terms of taking forward that protection, maintenance and enhancement of the natural capital on the farms. And importantly, into that we will capture the soil organic matter element, which is part of that carbon capture, that carbon baseline. So trying to see the whole thing working together as one picture. So those are the 4 ambitions very quickly and what we've achieved this year. The priorities for next year coming out of that is that, one, we need to engage better with our potential farm applicants so that we can help them understand exactly what type of farm tenant we're looking for, what skill sets they need in addition to their technical ability and their financial strength and then their entrepreneurial vision, but also that understanding about farming for the environment and farming for carbon. So that's a piece of work we need to do this year to upskill, help them understand so that they can better present themselves and we can choose tenants who can deliver our ambitions. Getting the whole farm plans moving, we have an ambition to have 25% of the estate completed by the end of year 3, including our 2 larger land holdings, which is at Mitchell through to Trice Manor and at Quithy up near Liskeard. Developing concept around local foods. Interesting here, the last debate about local food growing and so on and so forth. But how can we get local communities who've got community supported agricultural ambitions? Can we find parts of our farms where they can deliver those ambitions locally, where our land holdings are joined to villages and communities? So that's quite an exciting opportunity. And again, it will create new entrants, more new entrants into the industry producing local food. A lot of it will be vegetable based and fruit based, picking up on Dominic's conversation from earlier. And then finally, developing our understanding of our carbon footprint and understanding what interventions we need to make as landlord and through our tenants, and how do we support our tenants, how do we educate our tenants so that they can change some of their farming practices to reduce their carbon release and to increase their carbon sequestration. So that's the 4 ambitions, what we've learned and what we want to do next. I was also asked to comment on the new entrant scheme coming potentially out of DEFRA. So members may remember that in July 2018, the Minister then, George Eustice, wrote to us talking about his vision for investing and providing financial support for council farms and for delivery of new entrants, and targeting that financial support to those estates who have got a very clear vision about what they're trying to do. We've got a very clear vision about what we're trying to do. We're now waiting for DEFRA to catch up. Their agricultural transition plan, published in December 2020, made very clear reference to the new entrant support scheme, but after that it gets a little bit more vague. They are working on a co-design project at the moment, which should finish in July 2021. That's right, July 2021, which will shape from the industry what we want from a new entrant scheme. They will then be publishing that in 2022 and delivering it in 2022 through to 2024. Now, we don't yet know what the detail is. We've no idea what level of funding will be, etc. But I have been asked to sit on that co-design group with DEFRA, and so we are getting the ability to help shape and influence that co-design project and plan, and we'll perhaps get a bit of an advance notice of what might be coming. But I think we're in a good place to benefit from that scheme when it comes forward because of the vision that we've set out in our strategy. So Karen, I think that's really all that I want to say around the strategy. There are KPIs Appendix 2, which we've completed for this year. They are not as full as they could be. Some of the KPIs have proved to be slightly less easy to capture, or actually we've not been able to get the data at all for confidentiality reasons. And so we will need to revisit some of those in the light of our experience this year and bring those back afresh in year 2 with a slightly better shape, hoping to show they will be smarter for a start, and also hoping to show how the estate is moving forward in its activity. So I think that's really the report and a summary of what we've had, Carolyn, and happy now to take questions as required.
You're on mute, yeah, you're muted.
Sorry, I'm here chatting away. Thank you, Johnny. What I'll do is I'll bring Martin Alvey in first, if I may, please. Although we've got a list of speakers, the reason for that is Martin led the review on the deep dive inquiry into the farm strategy, and he's already given notice that he has to leave early today. So I'll bring in Martin Alvey, and then I'll go back to the top of the list, which is Cornelia. So Martin, would you like to come in first, please?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for bringing me in early. Hopefully I may still be here when we get to the recommendations, but if not, I'm sure Dominic will kindly type something into the effect of thanking Johnny and his team for the immense amount of work that they've done in turning our inquiry and the vision that came out of that inquiry into some reality, and the way that this report has been presented actually very clearly sets out the vision that came out of the inquiry in easy to read and in an easy to read and understand way, and yeah, for that he really does need to be commended, as does the whole of the team. Can I also suggest that once we've signed this off, that perhaps there's some media publicity around it and the successes, and because I really think this is something to be celebrated, and as the inquiry showed, an awful lot of the public out there don't actually realise the extent of the county farms estate, and I think it's something to shout about as something that we are doing well, and really just to put that message across. Also, very, very pleased to see the details of the new tenancies that have come about in the past year as a result of this change in direction, and I'm quite excited to see, as years progress and they become established in their tenancies, the reality of the new breed of farmer coming into our estate, in terms of the productivity of their farms and hopefully profitability of their farms, but also the fact that we're doing it in a new and far more environmentally conscious way. I'll say no more. I just wanted to get something in case I did have to disappear off before everyone else had stopped asking.
Thanks, Martin. Thank you. Well, I've got quite a list of speakers that want to ask questions, but I'm very conscious that we need to finish this by 1:30 because we have to change over the live stream then. So if I can ask, if you could be very succinct in your questioning, that would be brilliant. And Johnny, if you could be quite quick in your answering, that would be really appreciated. I'm sorry, I don't mean to stifle anything. So the first question is from Cornelius Olivier, please. Cornelius?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Johnny, for that very interesting report. I've got two precise statistical questions. You said 43,000 tonnes of carbon emission, 80 to 92% came from animal farming, I think you said, but you didn't know what it looked like. Is it possible to produce a comparison with how many car miles or vehicle miles that would take?
We
will do something. We will do something to that effect because we need to make it real. Yes.
Yeah. To visualize. Yeah. And the other point is, in terms, this is a difficult question. It was good to hear about the initiatives in the field of environmental growth. Is it at all possible to provide a sort of quantification of how much improvement in environmental growth there's been, like, 5% or 10% or 2%, or is that going a bit far?
Yeah, I think it's too early to give that quantum position. I think what I sense is first of all it's a change in the mindset.
Yeah,
and actually it's a bit about heads and hearts here. And actually changing that mindset, and I think this is where the whole farm reports come in, helping our tenants understand the natural capital they've already got, that all of their previous management has created this. It will incentivise them and encourage them to do more. And we've always known that as we've talked to our farming community, as we share with them the thoughts of directions of travel, they normally respond with head and heart and take it a lot further. So I don't think we can say we are 5% better than we were a year ago. It's probably too complex to treat it in such a simple way.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. Can I just say, Caroline, at this point, I have to go to the local outbreak engagement board at 1:30, the COVID body at 1:30, so I'm sorry about that. But thank you, Johnny.
Take care, sweetheart. Right, now can I ask Mike Thomas next, please?
Thanks very much, Caroline. Thank you very much, Johnny. In terms of farming futures, the section really about recruiting and tenants interviews, can you give us an idea of the volume of people who are actually applying? Because that sort of supply of new farmers is crucial, and I suspect it means a lot of work for you working with the higher education providers, presumably within Cornwall. And my second question is the issue of care farmers. I couldn't find that in the report. Is there any development in that area? Because that was something that came up, I recall, right at the beginning, the idea of a care farm. Just a quick aside, this is a theme at the moment on the Archers, the issue of the interview. One of the characters is going for an interview. So obviously we are very topical.
Well, I'm afraid I can't comment on the Archers. I apologise for that complete lack of knowledge in my in my working week. So apologies for that. But in terms of number of applicants, we've tended to interview between 3 and 5 applicants for each farm. We tend to receive between 5 and 10 applications for each farm, and depending on the quality of the farm, the type of the farm, the location of the farm, that can dictate those numbers. But we will often show another 5 people, so about 15 people might view a farm, 10 people might apply for it, we might interview 5. So that's sort of numbers. And as you can imagine, they've all got good reason why they're walking the farm. They all produce, on the whole, decent business plans, and that is something which certainly we could see coming through from Dutchy College training, the quality of what are effectively home written plans, not consultant written plans. So the numbers are there, numbers are strong.
Good.
We just need to help them understand what a new council farm tenant will look like compared to what they think it might have looked like in the past. So did a bit of education and helping them understand.
And presumably working with Dutchy yourself, actually you going into Dutchy.
I think so. I think there's a two-way approach. One is that we need to produce some guidance to people who are looking, and perhaps we're thinking of some training courses with Dutchy providing the training as a possible way forward. We've talked about some accelerator groups, taking a group of potential applicants and putting them through a process and accelerating the ones who've really got the aptitude quickly through. We're trying to explore what is the best way of moving things forward, and not just doing what we've always done, which kind of is where you naturally start, but we are at the point where we think we can refresh and review what we've been doing. So that's about the number of applicants. Care farms absolutely remains part of the ambition. We have had one application from what was effectively a care farm applicant, but it didn't quite stand scrutiny against other applicants and was weak in certain areas. In truth, the farm they applied for was probably too big for their ambition. There may be other opportunities, but it's certainly something that we are looking at, and how we can incorporate that care farm concept into one of our tenancies. Very much what we're looking to do, and I think what we've learned is that the strategy is much more fluid than fixed. So we're not saying farm A will be a care farm. We're saying we're looking for care farm applications and seeing whether something comes through that we can then run with and support. But if the right application for the right farm, certainly that will be something that we will be endeavouring to do. And I think probably, Mike, Fenton Fenner Farm, Indian Queens, is something which is akin to that, which is linked to the Nuki Orchard project, is kind of that ilk, but not quite.
Excellent. I really would welcome some training in this. I think perhaps we should have mandatory farming training.
Let's stop. We had enough of a debate on that.
I don't like the word mandatory.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Right. And thanks, Johnny. I'll now call in Councillor Luke, please. Matt Luke. Oh, no, I beg your pardon, John Bastin. I do beg your pardon. John, you're next. Yeah. It is John that's next. I'm sorry, Matt.
That's right.
And apologies for dropping out earlier on. Apparently my machine overheated, so I don't know.
I'm glad you're here now, my love.
Right, thanks. A couple of quick technical questions for Johnny, really, if I can. You mentioned biodigesters, and clearly the methane can be burnt then to give energy, but they're both greenhouse gases, methane and CO2, and I'm just wondering, is there a kind of a payoff level where you can say burning it is better than having the methane, if that makes sense?
I'm not a technical sort of man in that respect, but my understanding is by capturing the methane, which is a much stronger gas in the atmosphere than burning it and turning it into CO2, there are some benefits there. But of course, what we're doing is we're capturing an energy and not creating energy for vehicles through carbon. So I think that's where the benefits are. And this is a pilot study. The company that we're working with are technical leaders in this country, and Cormac are the third part of that. So it's an exciting project. My understanding is that the burning of the biomethane is better than the release of the methane.
Right, yes, I can kind of understand where you're coming from, because methane's heavier, I must say.
That's right.
And the second question, and I don't expect you to have the answer to this one straight away, but it's a little bit of research I'm doing. What percentage of the land stock is grade 3A and above?
On our estate, very little is better than grade 3. So in Cornwall, the majority of the grade 1 land, as you'll know, is sort of down the Penzance through coming back up to Marazion area. We haven't got any of that on our estate. We've got a little bit of grade 2, but the majority of our estate is good grade 3, grass growing land, the kind of land that you can crop for arable crops, wheat, barley, potentially maize, occasionally potatoes, but wouldn't be good enough to rotate through that on a regular basis. And grass is really the staple crop, which of course leads back to that livestock predominance that we have.
The dairy and the beef, as you say.
Right.
Anyway, that's very useful. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, Matt, sorry to keep you waiting, my love. Matt Luke next, please.
No, that's fine, not a problem at all. Hi, Johnny. I just want to congratulate the team and that again on a fantastic report. Really easy to understand. Really glad it's going the way that we all kind of visualised in diversification of the farms with the seed production and and growing trees and different things. Great, that's the way we were travelling. What I wanted to. Great. I don't understand the carbon thing, so it kind of, if we could simplify that for us idiots that look at it all and go, oh, we don't understand that at all. You part of answered the methane project with me as in it is a project, and are we looking to kind of expand that across the rest of the farms in the estate? Because I imagine it must dictate to how big a slurry pit you've got to whether it's viable to do it, etc., etc. So is that something we're going to look to spread out if viable?
Yeah, so Matt, the answer is it's a pilot project. Bannerman's, the technical company, had installed one unit in Cornwall, and we offered our estate as being the base where they could try to develop a more sort of mainstream production system and installation system. If it is successful, if the gas capture is significant and provides the financial returns, and I'm sure that it will become mainstream. What we also know is that DEFRA are keen to improve air quality, so that could see mandatory covering of slow lagoons in the future. So part of this work is about preparing ourselves for that position in the future. And the worst case scenario would be that we had to cover a lagoon, capture the gas, and then burn it off, which would give no benefit. So we're at the very beginning of that. That's why it's a pilot study supported by the council's carbon capital programme, and we're at the very beginning. I can see it going much further. We have a number of other estates, both council estates and private estates, who are waiting to be able to go and have a look at this in situ. The very first pilot farm is gas ready at the end of this month, which means that the covering's in place and they've purged the air from the system, and we're going to draw the first bits of the biomethane gas off probably into March now. So we're at the very exciting part of this phase. So I see it going further, Matt.
Excellent. Good. Keep up the good work. Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, darling. Now, I'm very conscious of the timings. We've got Dominic next, please, and then Ian Thomas. Can we try and sort of make them a little bit more concise, the answers and the questions? Sorry. Thank you, Dominic. Sorry.
So I had loads to say, so I'll keep it down to my two substantive points.
Sorry, my love.
So first of all, so I went through the report comparing it back to our inquiry recommendations. And I'm pleased to say that I feel that 90% has been met. It was a job well done. Despite the fact it went through a strategy after that, all the aspirations we seek to make have been met. So congratulations, and that will be highlighted in the recommendations. Where I would challenge you is our inquiry. One of the key ones was that applicants are shortlisted and selected with a heavy weighting given to our ambitions around innovation, environmental growth, public access, education and/or care farming. There's lots in the report about carbon, which is good because there is a climate emergency, but of more immediacy to Cornwall is the ecological emergency. So we are losing wildlife and habitats, and our rivers are suffering. And these are things that what we do in Cornwall affects what happens in Cornwall, if you know what I mean. It's all a lot more local. And I would challenge you that your scoring matrix that gives environmental growth 25% is not ambitious enough. Okay, giving 25% I don't think is a heavy weighting when you've got 75% that's made up of technical ability, financial planning, and progression and all the other things. So I would push you to go hard on that, and especially you've just said you're going to give some thoughts about how that is. Yes, I would push you to go higher on that. I don't think you're quite making the ambition of our, and I don't think, you know, it is an ecological emergency. We are, you know, there was a report out the other day about fresh river fish, and they're declining in alarming numbers, and that's our local rivers. On the River Camel, you know, the decline in salmon is dramatic, and this is all our own farming practices from the last 20-30 years. So I would push you on that. And then finally, you've invited comment on the KPIs. So I'm going to try one more time to get organic farming included into your KPIs. And that's because you've helpfully given us a table of 4 farms. And the 2 farms, the bottom 2, are dairy farms. And while you might point out that there is less of a difference between carbon per tonne of produce, yeah, there's quite a hefty difference in carbon per tonne per hectare. And I would argue that in order to address the climate emergency, our diets are going to have to change, and you're not giving enough recognition to the tonnes per hectare and too much recognition to the tonnes per of tonne produce. So I would still like to see organic farming specifically mentioned in the KPIs. If you want, I'll try and whip round the members to make it a specific recommendation, or if you nod to me, I'll be there's a 50-50 chance I'll be back in May to say all this again. So
duly nodding.
So on both points, I accept what you're saying, Dominic, and I think what I've learned over the last year, looking at the interview process and looking at tenants, is that whilst we have tried to increase the weighting around the environmental growth as part of the interview process, the applicants haven't really understood what we're asking them to tell us, and that's the whole piece really about us going out to potential new tenants and helping them understand what we're looking for. And so I think we do take seriously what you're saying, and we've learnt in the last year that there isn't that level of understanding there yet, and we need to go and do some education, help our tenants understand, so that they, prospective tenants understand, so they in turn can prepare to meet our ambition, and then we will be able to add greater weighting to that environmental growth aspect in the interview process. So I accept that challenge and that slight criticism, and in a positive way. Thank you. And organic dairy farming, yes, you're absolutely right that the tonnes per hectare is much lower, and organic does form a part of this, and we do need to rethink how do we make organic farming part of our practice. The challenge is around business case and business plan, and applicants coming forward with those in as being part of their proposal. But we are not we're not against organic farming. Let me put that straight right at the beginning. We're looking for the very best applicants with the very best business plans for our holdings, and that is not always an organic model. But we'll keep exploring that, and we will record in next year's KPIs how much of our land is in organic status.
Okay, I've recorded that segment for you,
yes.
Rob. And just for Cornelius's benefit, 1 tonne of carbon is 1 person flying to New York and back.
Oh, right, that's interesting. Thank you. Right, the final question is from Ian Thomas, please. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Johnny, for the report. I think it's really exciting report and statistics and information, and I wish I was 50 years younger because I'd have a crack at it myself. Just some observations, which I have got a question, but it follows an observation. Lots of talk about crops and food, energy schemes, and despite the fact we talk about wildflowers and trees, there's two observations. Little mention of, going back to the eco bit that Dominic mentioned, very little about wetlands, very little about fish. Is there opportunities on our land to grow fish, for argument's sake? You mentioned the proximity of some of our estate to towns and villages, and thinking about income generation and public demand, are there opportunities within our estate to create allotments, you know, on the edge of towns and villages that are easy accessible, can provide income, and also help our eco biosystems? So that's observation. And a final observation, told you I was pedantic, page 92, Carvinnock Farm, the tenancy took occupation of the holding on the 29th of September 2021. Thank you. Should be 2020.
Thanks, Ian. Back to you, Johnny.
Yeah, no, so allotments, we've got allotments on the estate managed by a couple of parish councils already and have been open to that. The Fenton Fenner plan for that holding includes effectively food growing. It's kind of what I would call mega allotments or micro farming. So food production in allotment style. And yes, we have got ambitions to do that more if town and parish councils come forward, and we're trying to work out how can we carve out a bit of land to make that happen, either through micro farms with new entrants or community supported agriculture, which is kind of on organic, an allotment based production. The conversation I had with Garn Haven community on Monday night about something at Carvinnock Farm down at Garn Haven was all about how do we bring food production onto a couple of acres which the community can deliver right next door to the school, and making the whole thing work together. So quite an exciting opportunity. There's some way to go, but the ambition is there. It'll all be in the delivery.
Thank you. Right, colleagues, we've done it, I think. Dominic, can you share your screen for an idea for recommendations for us, please? Thank you very much, my love. Oh, brilliant. You've done it with, that's Martin's bit that he wanted. The committee acknowledges the hard work of the county farms team in realising the scope and ambition of the committee inquiry. That is brilliant, isn't it? It has been great to see. Right, that looks good to me. Dominic, are you proposing that, please?
Yeah, happy to propose.
Thank you. And can I have somebody to second that?
Can I second, but can I also ask if Dominic can put something in about diversification of the farming industry and the way we're going forward? You can word it better than I am. He's better at that kind of thing than I.
Yeah, he's good at this sort of stuff, isn't he? In particular, around environmental growth, diversification and organic farming. Is that okay, Matt?
And I'm happy to second that. That's great, lovely.
Thank you very much. Are there any amendments to that? Right, nobody's put an X in the box. So can I ask you, Joe, to go to the vote, please? It's proposed by Dominic and seconded by Matt.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just read out what's on the screen. So it's the committee acknowledges the hard work of the county farms team in realising the scope and ambition of the committee inquiry. And number 2, comment and feedback as detailed on the recording and in the minutes are taken into account by the county farms team, in particular around environmental growth, diversification and organic farming. So if I can move to the vote again. So now I'll call out your names in order. Please can you repeat your name and advise whether you vote in favour or against the recommendations, and whether you wish to abstain from the vote. I'll then count the votes and advise the result accordingly. So I think Councillor Martin Alvey, are you there, or have you left?
He's had to go, darling.
Okay. Councillor John Bastin.
John Bastin for.
Councillor Malcolm Brown.
Malcolm Brown for.
Nikki Chopak.
Nikki Chopak for.
Councillor Dominic Fairman.
Dominic Fairman for.
Councillor Pauline Giles.
Pauline Giles for.
Councillor Steve Knightley.
Stephen Knightley for.
Councillor Matt Luke.
Councillor Matt Luke for.
Councillor Cornelius Olivier.
He's had to go, I think.
Thank you.
I can confirm that Councillor Olivier's left the meeting.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you. Councillor Carolyn Roll.
Carolyn Rule for.
Councillor John Simmons.
John Simmons, 4.
Ian Thomas.
Ian Thomas, 4.
Councillor Mike Thomas.
Mike Thomas, 4.
Councillor Kevin Towell.
Kevin Towell, 4.
Thank you. So, Chairman, this vote is out of 12 members who are in the meeting at the moment. Everybody has voted in favour, so the recommendations are carried.
Thank you very much. And Johnny, can I thank you very much, you and I was going to say you and your team, but I guess it's mostly you really, but the select team, small and select.
It's mostly the team. It's mostly the team. I'm just the figurehead. They do all the hard work.
But can you pass on our grateful thanks to them? I know that would be good. And thank you for bringing our vision to life, really. It's great to see. That's lovely. Colleagues, I'm now proposing that we break for lunch, and also we're going to change over the live stream. So thank you all very much for your time. So if we stay here, what happens is the live stream goes back. The members of the public, I beg your pardon, join on a different link which Debbie will have sent out to them already. So this is just for us. We stay here. So turn our cameras and microphones off. It's now well, 1:30 all but. So if we come back at 10 to 2, would that be convenient, please? We have a 20-minute break. So if we come back here again, please, at 1:50 or 10 to 2. And thank you, everybody. Thanks, Adam. Thank you for your time. We'll see you later. If you turn your cameras and microphones off, please. Thank you.